Picture, if you will, a world wrapped in a blanket of heavy, humid green. We are drifting back in time, deeper than history, deeper than legend, descending into the geologic silence of the Miocene epoch. 6, perhaps 7 million years ago. We find ourselves standing on the soft, mulched floor of a planet that is at once familiar and utterly alien. There are no roads, no fires, no spoken words to break the stillness. There is only the breathing of the earth. The air here is thick, saturated with the moisture of a biosphere in overdrive. It hangs heavy in the lungs, smelling of crushed ferns, wet bark, and the sweet fermenting scent of overripe figs dropping from the canopy above. The silence is not empty. It is a crowded, living presence. It is the deep, cathedral-like quiet of a primeval forest, broken only by the sudden rasping cry of a cicada or the distant crash of a falling branch. Sunlight struggles to touch the ground here. It filters through the woven ceiling of leaves in thick golden shafts, pillars of illumination that dance with dust motes, lighting up a world that belongs to the giants. In this verdant shadow, the ancestors of humanity are not yet human. They are creatures of the twilight, beings of immense power and instinct, moving through the dappled patterns of the understory. They are the great apes of the Miocene, the grandfathers of our species. Picture them not as primitive caricatures, but as majestic biological machines, perfectly tuned to this world of trees and humidity. Their bodies are wrapped in coarse, dark fur that sheds the rain. Their arms are long, sinewy ropes of muscle, capable of hauling heavy frames into the safety of the branches. They move with a deliberate, rolling grace, knuckle-walking over the roots, their eyes scanning the gloom with an intelligence that is sharp, reactive, and constantly assessing the geometry of power around them. In this epoch, the law of the land is not written in treaties or spoken in debates. It is written in violence and dominance. It is a law enforced by the physical reality of the body, specifically by a singular, terrifying weapon carried in the mouth. Let us look closely at the face of one of these ancient patriarchs. He sits in a shaft of sunlight, picking the skin from a fruit. His brow is heavy, a solid bar of bone that shades deep-set eyes, eyes that burn with a vigilant intensity. The lower half of his face projects forward, a muzzle that speaks of a different evolutionary priority than our own. This is not a face designed for the soft shaping of vowels or the whispering of secrets. It is a face built for impact. It is a face constructed around the architecture of the Fang. When he pauses, perhaps sensing a rival male approaching through the ferns, he opens his mouth in a slow, deliberate yawn. But this is no sign of fatigue. It is a display. It is the unsheathing of a sword. As the lips peel back, the humid air catches the gleam of ivory. The canine teeth are massive, conical daggers that extend far past the gum line, curving slightly backward. They are the silent witnesses of a brutal social order. These are not the modest, leveled teeth of modern man. These are weapons of war, honed to a razor's edge by the very mechanics of the skull. Deep within the anatomy of this jaw lies a mechanism known as the C/P3 honing complex, a dry, scientific term for a terrifying reality. Every time this creature closes his mouth, the back of the massive upper canine slides against the front of the lower premolar. It is a biological whetstone. The tooth sharpens itself against its neighbor, grinding away the enamel to keep the blade permanently acute, permanently ready to slice through skin and muscle. It is a weapon that maintains itself, a knife that never goes dull. Imagine the sound of that grinding in the quiet of the forest. A soft click-scrape, click-scrape. It is the sound of anxiety. It is the sound of a world on edge. These fangs were the ultimate arbiters of status. In the dense foliage of the Miocene, where visibility was low and danger was high, the hierarchy of the troop was measured by the length of the tooth. For a male of this species, the canine was his crown. It was the signal broadcast to the world. I am dangerous. I am strong. I am not to be touched. To possess the largest fangs was to possess the right to mate, the right to the best feeding grounds, the right to sit at the center of the troop while others huddled at the periphery. But consider the weight of this crown. The existence of such weaponry dictated a life of constant, exhausting vigilance. The forest was a place where peace was maintained only by the threat of these white, gleaming blades. Every social interaction was a potential duel. A glance held too long, a piece of fruit taken out of turn, a step too close to a favored female. Any of these small infractions could trigger the flash of the dagger. To live in this body was to be trapped in an evolutionary arms race with one's own kin. The energy required to grow these teeth was immense. The body had to divert calcium, phosphorus, and precious metabolic resources to construct these pillars of bone. The jaw itself had to be built to accommodate them. The roots of these canines ran deep into the maxilla, anchoring them against the violent forces of a bite. The skull had to be reinforced, the muscles of the neck thickened to absorb the shock of impact. We were creatures designed around the mouth, built to bite and to withstand being bitten. And there was a mechanical cost to this dominance. This is the duality of the fang. It is a weapon, yes, but it is also a cage. Because of the sheer size of the upper and lower canines, the jaws of our ancestors were locked in their movement. The teeth interlocked like the gears of a trap. When the mouth was closed, the jaw could not move freely from side to side. It could only snap shut and open wide. The rotary motion, the gentle rhythmic grinding that we humans use today to chew a piece of bread or a fibrous root, was biologically impossible for them. They could crush and they could tear, but they could not grind. They were prisoners of their own weaponry, forced to eat only what their restrictive anatomy allowed. Soft fruits, tender shoots, the occasional scrap of meat, anything that could be processed by a simple vertical chomp. The fang, therefore, was a limiting factor. It tethered them to the forest, to the soft foods of the canopy. It prevented them from venturing out into the harsher, drier lands, where the food was tougher and required more processing. They were kings of the forest, but they were slaves to the fruit. Let us watch a scene from this ancient drama. The sun is beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. The troop is settling in for the night, climbing high into the branches of a massive fig tree to escape the leopards that prowl the forest floor. The dominant male, a silver-backed giant with scars etched across his snout, claims the highest, sturdiest fork in the tree. Below him, a younger male, brimming with testosterone and ambition, moves slightly too close. The reaction is instantaneous. The older male does not speak. He does not reason. He drops his head, his heavy brow ridge shadowing his eyes, and he opens his mouth wide. The effective display. It is a gesture of horrifying clarity. The pink gums retract, exposing the full length of the canines, 2 inches of glistening, serrated bone. He lets out a low, guttural roar, a sound that vibrates in the chest cavities of everyone nearby. The message is primal and absolute. It is a language older than words, older than our species. It says, "I hold the power of death in my mouth." The younger male freezes. He sees the weapon. He calculates the odds in the ancient arithmetic of survival. He lowers his eyes, covers his teeth with his lips, and backs away, making himself small. The tension dissipates, but the atmosphere remains charged. The peace of the troop is fragile, held together by the terror of the bite. This was the world of our fathers, a world of high stakes and short lives, a world where to be toothless was to be nothing. To lose a canine in a fight or an accident was a catastrophe. It was to be stripped of rank, stripped of defense, stripped of identity. The broken-toothed were the outcasts, the ghosts who moved on the edges of the firelight, waiting for the scraps. Yet, even here, in the dominance of the Fang, there is a subtle tragedy. The reliance on this weapon meant that trust was impossible. How can you truly bond with a neighbor who carries a loaded gun in his face? How can there be true tenderness when a smile is a threat? The social bonds of the Miocene apes were strong, yes, but they were forged in the fires of intimidation. Cooperation existed, but it was brittle. The troop was a collection of individuals held together by gravity and fear, rather than a woven tapestry of empathy. As night fully descends upon the Miocene forest, the sounds of the day fade. The chirping of crickets rises like a tide. Our ancestors huddle together in the branches, clutching each other for warmth, their heavy breathing synchronized in the dark. In their sleep, their mouths fall open slightly, and the moonlight catches the tips of those terrible teeth. They do not know it yet, but the world is changing around them. The great geological clock is ticking. Far away, tectonic plates are shifting. Ocean currents are redirecting. The moisture that feeds their cathedral of green is beginning to dry up. The forests are starting to shrink, retreating like a slow tide, leaving behind islands of trees in a rising sea of grass. The verdant shadow is beginning to thin, and as the environment shifts, the rules of the game will shift with it. The weapon that has served them so well for millions of years, the ivory dagger, the status symbol, the tool of tyranny, is about to become a liability. The earth is preparing to ask a new question of this lineage. It will ask them to trade their strength for something else. It will ask them to trade the sword for the hand, the bite for the word, the fear for the smile. But that is a story for the future. For now, in the heavy heat of the ancient night, the Fang is still king. The forest sleeps, and the ancestors dream, their jaws locked tight, waiting for a dawn that will bring a world they can scarcely imagine, a world where the giants have fallen, and the meek, with their small, flat teeth, have inherited the earth. Let the image fade slowly. The golden shafts of light retracting, the green canopy dissolving into the mists of time. We leave them there, suspended in the amber of the past, the masters of a violent paradise, unaware that the seeds of their own transformation are already hidden deep within the marrow of their bones. Chapter 2. The Crown of Ivory and Fear. If we linger a moment longer in this ancient twilight, we must understand the burden of the crown. We must understand that evolution is an economist, a ruthless accountant that tallies the cost of every biological investment. And the investment in the Fang was steep. To possess the Crown of Ivory was to be drafted into a biological destiny of isolation. We often think of the alpha male as the pinnacle of success, but let us strip away the romanticism and look at the biological reality. The male with the largest fangs is a creature under siege. He is the guardian of the gene pool, yes, but he is also the primary target. Deep in the hormonal wash of his blood, testosterone surges like a poison tide. It drives the growth of the teeth, but it also drives a behavior of constant aggression. His life is a series of skirmishes. He bears the scars of 100 battles, ears torn by the canines of rivals, fingers mangled in the desperate grappling of the canopy. His stress levels are permanently elevated. He sleeps lightly, one ear always turned toward the rustle of leaves. He cannot afford the luxury of play or the softness of prolonged grooming. He is a solitary fortress defending the perimeter of his status. This morphology, this physical shape, created a society of me against you. It limited the capacity for what we now call pro-social behavior. When you are built like a weapon, every problem looks like a fight. The conflict resolution strategy of the Miocene was simple: escalate until one party submits. There was no negotiation. There was no compromise. There was only the binary outcome of the physical contest. And consider the females of this era. They too lived in the shadow of the Fang. Though their own canines were smaller, a stark reminder of the sexual dimorphism that defined their species, they lived in a world dictated by the temperaments of the weaponized males. Their survival strategies had to navigate this landscape of potential violence. They formed alliances, quiet coalitions in the underbrush, grooming each other's fur with nervous, rapid fingers, soothing the tensions that the males created. In a way, they were the keepers of the peace, the ones who managed the emotional fallout of the fanged society. But even they were limited. The constant threat of infanticide, a grim reality in many primate societies where a new alpha seeks to erase the genetic legacy of his predecessor, meant that the females had to be hyper-vigilant. The presence of the Fang meant that the babies were never truly safe. The weapon that protected the troop from the leopard was the same weapon that could turn on the nursery. This was the trap of the tusk, the very trait that ensured the survival of the fittest individual, often endangered the cohesion of the group. It was a paradox carved in calcium. The environment, however, has a way of solving paradoxes. As the Miocene progressed, the grand, stable climate began to wobble. The seasons grew more pronounced. The endless buffet of soft fruits began to fail. There were times of plenty, followed by times of famine. The monopolizable food sources, the rich, concentrated patches of fruit trees that a single fanged male could defend, became rarer. The food became scattered. To eat, one had to move. One had to travel across the widening gaps in the forest, down onto the ground, into the scrub. And in this new, scattered world, the solitary defense of a food source became impossible. A single male, no matter how long his teeth, could not guard a square mile of scattered bushes. The Crown of Ivory was beginning to slip. The economic logic was shifting. The energy spent on growing weapons and fighting rivals was energy that was not being spent on finding food or caring for offspring. The metabolic cost of aggression was becoming too high. We can see the first hints of this transition in the fossil record, like a faint whisper in a noisy room. A subtle reduction in the difference between male and female sizes. A slight thickening of the enamel on the molars, suggesting a diet that included harder, tougher foods. The silent errors in the code of life, the genetic mutations, were beginning to accumulate, offering a different option. What if, the genome asked, what if we didn't fight? What if the male who spent less time sharpening his fangs and more time gathering food for his mate actually raised more surviving children? What if the nice guy didn't finish last, but finished with a full belly and a living family? It was a radical proposal. It went against millions of years of primate tradition. It required a dismantling of the warrior class. It required the body to disarm itself. But nature is patient. It does not rush. It tests every hypothesis in the laboratory of survival. And slowly, imperceptibly, the selection pressure began to tilt. The sexual selection that once favored the massive, terrifying display of the canine began to favor something else. It began to favor the male who was less reactive, less aggressive, more cooperative. The females, perhaps, began to choose the partners who were not the biggest bullies, but the best providers. They began to select for tameness, and as they did, the testosterone levels dropped. The growth instructions for the massive fangs were dialed down, generation by generation. This was not a sudden event. It was a glacial softening. It was the erosion of a mountain range by the gentle, persistent rain of a new social logic. Imagine a lineage of fathers and sons stretching over thousands of centuries. In the beginning, the father has teeth like switchblades. 10,000 generations later, the son has teeth like chisels. The honing complex is fading. The gap in the jaw, the diastema, is closing. The face is becoming less of a muzzle and more of a mask. We are witnessing the birth of the feminized male face, a face that retains the strength of the ape but abandons the cruelty of the tyrant, a face that is preparing for a new kind of power, the power of the pack. But let us not get ahead of ourselves. In the high noon of the Miocene, this future is still a dream. The fangs are still sharp. The roars still echo through the valleys. The giants still walk with the swagger of the invulnerable. They do not know that they are the last of their kind, the end of an era of solitary kings. They do not know that the grass is coming. Chapter 3. The Whispering of a New World. The transition from the forest to the savannah is often told as a story of feet, of learning to walk upright. But it is also, and perhaps more profoundly, a story of the face. As the trees thinned, the canopy, that safe, three-dimensional world where our ancestors lived, began to fragment. The patches of light on the forest floor grew larger, connecting into broad avenues of sun-drenched grass. The air grew drier, crisp with the scent of dust and pollen. The temperature fluctuated wildly from the scorching heat of the midday sun to the biting chill of the open night. The old strategy of dominate and defend relied on a static world. You found a good tree, you barred your teeth, you kept everyone else away. But a static strategy is a death sentence in a dynamic world. The new world demanded flexibility. It demanded a creature that could eat anything, tubers buried in the hard earth, nuts with shells like stone, the meat of scavenged carcasses, the soft berries of the bush. The specialist eater, with his locking jaw and slicing teeth, was at a disadvantage. He looked at a hard nut and saw a rock. He looked at a tough root and saw something he could not chew. But the mutants, the ones with the slightly smaller canines, the ones whose jaws had unlocked, they saw dinner. This is where the silent witness of the tooth becomes the hero of the story. The reduction of the canine was not just a loss of a weapon, it was the gain of a tool. As the interference of the upper canine vanished, the lower jaw was free to move in a rotary grinding motion. The molars, those great millstones at the back of the mouth, could finally do their work properly. Suddenly, the menu of the earth expanded. The dietary niche exploded. Our ancestors could process distinct textures. They could extract calories from sources that would starve a specialized fruit eater. They became the ultimate survivors, the biological opportunists who could make a meal out of the landscape's leftovers. And with this dietary shift came a shift in temperament. To scavenge, to gather, to search, These are activities that are safer done in groups. A lone ape on the savannah is a snack for a saber-toothed cat. A group of apes standing together, shouting together, throwing stones together. That is a force to be reckoned with. The whispering of a new world was the sound of this new cooperation. It was the sound of voices calling out to one another across the tall grass, keeping contact. It was the sound of shared food being broken and distributed. The aggression that was once focused inward toward rivals within the troop began to be refocused outward toward predators and external threats. The enemy was no longer the brother who wanted your mate. The enemy was the hyena that wanted your child. And so the social brain hypothesis began to take hold. The brain began to grow, fueled by the higher calorie diet and the complex demands of social navigation. But this brain needed a face that could communicate its complexity. It needed a face that wasn't frozen in a permanent snarl. The receding Fang cleared the stage for the face to become a billboard of emotion. Without the bulging obstruction of the canine roots, the muscles of the mid-face could become more refined. The lips became more mobile. The smile, that mysterious, uniquely human gesture, began to emerge from the biological machinery of the threat display. In the primate world, showing teeth is a threat. But as the teeth became harmless, the meaning inverted. The baring of the teeth became a signal of submission, of non-aggression. "Look," the smile says, "I have no weapons. I am safe. I am a friend." It is a beautiful irony, is it not? That the very loss of our capacity for physical violence gave birth to our capacity for physical kindness. We had to become weak to become strong. We had to lose the dagger to gain the handshake. Deep in the genetic code, the domesticated genes were winning. The adrenal glands were shrinking. The serotonin levels were rising. We were domesticating ourselves, breeding the aggression out of our own lineage long before we ever domesticated the dog or the cow. We were the first experiment in taming the wild beast, and the beast was us. As you picture this era, imagine the twilight of the Fangs. A group of hominids moves through the golden savanna grass. They are upright now, their hands free to carry food or tools or babies. Their faces are flatter, more open. When they stop to rest, the males do not sit apart, guarding their perimeter. They sit mixed in with the females and the young. They touch. They groom. One of them finds a patch of tough tubers. He uses a digging stick to pry them from the earth. He does not hoard them. He breaks one in half and hands a piece to another. They eat together, their jaws grinding in a rhythmic rotary motion. The sound of the new jaw, the sound of the new survival. In the distance, a lion roars, a sound of pure predatory power. The hominids freeze. They look at each other. They do not have the fangs to fight this beast. They are naked, slow, and soft. By all rights, they should be extinct. But they have something the lion does not. They have each other. And they have a jaw that has allowed them to fuel a brain capable of outthinking the claws. They stand together, a wall of small-toothed solidarity, and they do not run. This is the moment the balance tipped. This is the moment we chose peace over war, not as a moral decision, but as a survival strategy. And in the silence of the genome, the instructions for the ivory dagger were filed away, a memory of a brutal past that we would carry with us, hidden in our smiles, forever. Let us descend further into the verdant gloom, past the veil of millions of years, to stand before the face of our ancient father. We are not looking at a reflection in a mirror, but at a formidable stranger, a being sculpted by a world that had no patience for weakness. To understand the journey of the human face, the softening of the jaw, the shrinking of the mouth, we must first pay homage to the weapon that came before. We must look closely, with the eye of an anatomist and the soul of a poet, at the biological dagger that once defined our lineage. In the brutal calculus of the primeval world, the fang was not merely a tooth, it was a crown. It was the physical manifestation of authority, a scepter of bone that protruded from the gum line, gleaming white against the dark, matted fur of the face. For the males of these ancient species, the proconsul, the Civipithecus, the early ancestors of the hominid line, a large canine was the ticket to genetic immortality. It was a signal broadcast to the trembling undergrowth, a message written in calcium and enamel that said, clearly and without need for translation, I am dangerous. I am strong. I am not to be trifled with. Imagine the dawn of a Miocene day. The mist clings to the canopy, thick and cold. A male primate sits on a moss-slicked branch, 50 feet above the forest floor. He is a magnificent specimen, his shoulders broad and draped in coarse hair, his chest deep like a barrel. He is the master of this troop, the guardian of the genetic line. But his power does not reside in his hands, nor in his intellect. It resides in the architecture of his skull. As the sun breaches the horizon, he opens his mouth to yawn, a slow, deliberate stretching of the jaw muscles. It is a moment of terrifying revelation. The lips peel back, rubbery and dark, to reveal the honing complex. This is the machinery of the killer. The upper canine is a long, conical spike, deeply rooted in the maxilla, the upper jawbone. It is a saber, curved slightly backward, designed to puncture and hold. But look closer. Look at how it interacts with the lower jaw. Every time he closes his mouth, the back edge of that upper saber slides against the front edge of the lower premolar. It is a perfect, biological scissor. Scritch, scratch. With every bite, every yawn, every idle gnashing of the teeth in sleep, the weapon sharpens itself. It is a self-maintaining blade, a knife that never goes dull. While the other teeth, the molars, the incisors, wear down with age, grinding away into flat, useless nubs, the canine remains sharp until death. It is the last thing to fail. It is the defining feature of his existence. To bare these teeth was to unsheathe a weapon. In the dense foliage, where visual lines of sight were broken by ferns and vines, the flash of white was a beacon. It sent a ripple of adrenaline through the forest floor, a chemical alarm that froze the blood of rivals and predators alike. Conflict in this world was physical, immediate, and often bloody. There were no courts of law, no negotiated settlements. There was only the geometry of the bite. But let us pause and consider the immense cost of this crown. Nature is a miser. She gives nothing for free. Every adaptation carries a price tag, paid for in energy, in vulnerability, in compromise. To carry such a weapon in the mouth is a heavy burden, both physically and existentially. Consider the energy required to construct these massive pillars of bone. From the moment of birth, the male infant is running a metabolic marathon. While the female infants might channel their energy into earlier maturation, the male must pour his resources into the forge of the jaw. He must divert calcium, phosphorus, and precious calories to grow these tusks. The roots of the canines are enormous, plunging deep into the skull, requiring the bone around them to be dense and heavy to prevent shattering upon impact. This demand reshapes the entire head. To support a jaw capable of driving these daggers into the flesh of a rival, The muscles of mastication, the temporalis and masseter, must be colossal. They fan out across the side of the cranium, requiring a ridge of bone on the top of the skull, the sagittal crest, just to anchor them. The face becomes a fortress of muscle and bone, built not for the delicate nuance of a smile, but for the devastating power of the clamp. This is the biography of the body, written in the language of constraint. The jaw, burdened by these interlocking teeth, is locked into a specific range of motion. Because the upper canine slots so tightly against the lower teeth, the jaw cannot move freely from side to side. It is a hinge, pure and simple. It can snap shut and it can open wide, but it cannot grind. Think of the limitation this imposes. A cow, a horse, a modern human. We can move our jaws in a rotary motion, grinding tough fibers, crushing seeds, milling grain into digestible paste. But the fanged ancestor is a prisoner of his own weaponry. He is restricted to the vertical bite. He can puncture fruit, he can tear meat, but he cannot effectively process the tough, fibrous foods of the open plains. He is tethered to the soft foods of the forest, a slave to the fruit trees. His weapon traps him in the ecological niche of the garden. And the burden is not just mechanical, it is psychological. The existence of the weapon dictates the rules of society. When every male carries a lethal dagger in his face, every social interaction is a potential duel. The Crown of Ivory dictates a life of constant, exhausting vigilance. Let us step into the mind of this alpha male for a moment. He cannot afford to be vulnerable. To close his eyes is to risk a coup. He lives in a state of high cortisol, a perpetual stress response. He watches the younger males, the bachelors who lurk on the periphery of the troop. He sees their canines growing day by day, millimeter by millimeter. He knows that one day their weapons will be as long as his. He knows that the only thing keeping him on the throne is the fear he inspires. This is the tyranny of the Fang. It creates a society based on despotism, where the strong take what they want and the weak scurry in the shadows. It is a lonely existence. There is little room for tenderness between males, little room for the brotherhood that would later define the human lineage. How can you embrace a brother when he is armed to the teeth? How can you trust a friend when his smile is a threat display? The arms race was internal. We were not just fighting leopards and hyenas, we were fighting our own kin. The logic of the Fang trapped us in a cycle of intrasexual competition. The males grew larger, scarier, and more aggressive because the females, driven by the need for protection in a violent world, selected the mates with the largest weapons. It was a feedback loop of fear. The scarier the world, the scarier the protectors needed to be. The scarier the protectors, the more violent the social world became. And so, the jaw remained heavy, jutting forward in a permanent snarl of potential violence. The face was a mask of intimidation. The snout projected outward, putting the weapons first, the eyes second. It was a face that led with force. But deep within the marrow of this ancient history, there is a tragedy that is often overlooked. To rely so heavily on a physical weapon is to be fragile in a profound way. What happens when the weapon breaks? Picture an old male, a former king of the canopy. He has survived a dozen challenges. He has fathered a generation, but time is the one predator he cannot bite. One day, biting down on a hard seed or perhaps in a skirmish with a younger rival, the unthinkable happens. A sickening crack echoes in his skull. The ivory dagger, his crown, his identity, snaps. In the wild, there are no dentists. There is no repair. The nerve is exposed, a throbbing wire of agony that pulses with every heartbeat. But the pain is secondary to the social catastrophe. Without the Fang, he is nothing. He has lost his badge of office. He cannot threaten. He cannot defend. He cannot maintain his place in the hierarchy. In a society built on the Fang, the toothless are the ghosts. They are pushed to the edge of the feeding circle. They catch the scraps. They fade away. The system has no mercy for the disarmed. This was the brutal calculus of the primeval world. Value was inextricably linked to the capacity for violence. To lose the capacity to harm was to lose the right to matter. And yet, even in this era of the weaponized mouth, the seeds of change were being sown. The environment, the great selector, was restless. The climate of the planet was beginning a slow, cooling dance. The lush, infinite forests of the Miocene were starting to break apart. The gaps between the trees were widening. The shadows were lifting. In the silence of the genome, silent errors were occurring, mutations, tiny shifts in the code of life. A gene that regulated the duration of tooth growth might stutter. A gene that controlled the level of testosterone in the developing fetus might dip. In the heyday of the Fang, these mutations were mistakes. A male born with smaller canines would be bullied, beaten, and left without a mate. His lineage would end. But nature plays a long game. The definition of fitness is not written in stone. It is written in sand, and the tide is always coming in. As the forest thinned, the food changed. The reliance on easily defended fruit trees became a liability. The troop needed to move, to forage on the ground, to explore the dangerous open spaces. In the open, a single pair of fangs is not enough defense against a pack of hyenas or a saber-toothed cat. A single male, no matter how terrifying, cannot watch every angle of the tall grass. The solitary strength of the alpha began to lose its currency. What was needed was many eyes. What was needed was many hands. What was needed was a wall of shields, not a single sword. And so, we stand on the precipice of a great mystery. How do we go from the snarl to the smile? How do we dismantle the crown of ivory? It is one of the most profound physiological changes in the history of life. We are the only primate that has systematically disarmed itself. We took the weapon out of our mouths. But before we could do that, we had to survive the age of the monster. We had to live through the epoch where the yawn was a warning and the bite was the law. Feel the texture of that ancient fear. It is the cold sweat in the middle of the night. It is the instinct to cover your throat when you are frightened. It is the way your hair stands on end when you hear a low growl. These are the memories of the Fang, etched into our autonomic nervous system. We remember the time when faces were long and heavy. We remember the time when to look a superior in the eye was a death sentence. The Crown of Ivory was a magnificent adaptation for a specific world. A world of shadows, of dense verticality, of solitary dominance. But it was a trap. It locked the species into a dead end of aggression. It consumed the body's resources. It prevented the jaw from becoming a tool of varied consumption. It prevented the mouth from becoming a chamber of speech. You cannot articulate the complex sounds of language when your mouth is full of knives. The dismantling of this fortress would require a revolution. Not a revolution of fire and blood, but a revolution of chemistry and behavior. It would require the brave choice, conscious or not, to stop fighting each other and start fighting the world together. But for now, in this chapter of our story, the Fang is still supreme. The night air of the Miocene is filled with the sounds of grinding teeth. The giants sleep with one eye open. their heavy heads resting on calloused hands, dreaming of dominance, unaware that the true power, the power of the gentle, the power of the small-toothed, the power of the word, is waiting for them in the tall grass of the future. The wind shifts. The scent of rain comes before the storm. The leaves of the ancient fig trees tremble, and somewhere in the dark, a small ape is born with a slightly shorter tooth, a slightly flatter face, a monster of meekness, a silent error that will one day rewrite the destiny of the earth. Let us linger here for a moment longer, in the presence of this raw, masculine power. Let us respect the Fang for what it was, a masterpiece of survival engineering. It kept our ancestors alive through the dark eons. It fought off the leopards. It won the mates. It secured the protein. It was the bridge we crossed to get here. But bridges are meant to be crossed, not lived upon. The crown of ivory was heavy, and the neck of humanity was beginning to ache. The time was coming to set the burden down. The time was coming to trade the sword for the plow, the bite for the kiss. The horizon is brightening, the forest is thinning, and the face of the earth is about to change. As the seasons cycle, wet to dry, dry to wet, the landscape transforms. The dense canopy, once an unbroken ocean of green, begins to fray. Sunlight, once a rare visitor to the forest floor, now floods in, encouraging the growth of tough, fibrous grasses. The stage is being set for the next act. The actors are still wearing their masks of war, but the script is being rewritten under their feet. Deep within the biological machinery, the balance is tipping. The cost of the weapon is becoming higher than the benefit. The male who fights constantly is often injured, often infected, often dead young. The male who fights less, who shares a little, who navigates the social world with a tilt of the head rather than a snap of the jaw, he is beginning to linger. He is surviving. This is the evolutionary duality at its most poignant. The very trait that made us kings of the forest, the Fang, became the chain that bound us to it. To leave the forest, to conquer the world, we had to break the chain. We had to shatter the crown. And so, the story moves from the anatomy of violence to the anatomy of connection. But the memory remains. Run your tongue over your own teeth. Feel the pointed tips of your canines, the third teeth from the center. They are small now. They are level with their neighbors. They are polite, but they are there. They are the ruins of the ancient fortress. They are the vestigial monuments to the time when we were giants, and the law was written in bone. When you feel anger rise, when you feel the urge to snap, to hurt, to dominate, that is the ghost of the Miocene stirring. That is the old king trying to reclaim his throne. But then you swallow, you breathe, you speak, you smile, and in that moment you reaffirm the choice our ancestors made millions of years ago. You choose the open hand over the closed mouth. You choose the future over the past. The sun sets on the Miocene. The shadows stretch long and thin. The crown of ivory glimmers one last time in the dying light, a beautiful, terrible instrument of a world that is fading away. The night comes, but it is not the end. It is the incubation. For in the dark, the jaw is relaxing. The tension is fading. The face is softening. And we are drifting, slowly, inevitably, toward the dawn of the smile. The story of the earth is written in chapters of ice and fire. But sometimes, the most profound changes begin with a whisper. We are drifting now, moving forward from the deep, humid stillness of the Miocene into a world that is beginning to wake up. The time is approximately 5 million years ago. The setting is the vast, shifting canvas of East Africa. a landscape that is in the throes of a slow geological violence that will rewrite the destiny of every living thing upon it. Picture, if you will, the view from the edge of the known world. For millions of years, the forest was the universe. It was a ceiling of green, a floor of damp mulch, a three-dimensional lattice of safety where our ancestors swung and slept. But now, the rhythm of the planet is changing. Deep beneath the crust, the tectonic plates are groaning, pulling apart the skin of the continent. The Great Rift is opening, a scar in the earth that changes the flow of the winds and the fall of the rain. The moisture that once fed the endless cathedrals of trees is being blocked by rising mountains. And so, the forest begins to retreat. It does not vanish in a day, nor in a single lifetime. It fades. The dense protective canopy, which had shielded our lineage from the harsh sun and the predators of the ground, begins to fracture. The trees pull back like a receding tide, leaving behind islands of woodland stranded in a rising sea of gold. This is the birth of the savanna. This is the emergence of the mosaic, a confusing patchwork world of open grass, scrubland, and isolated groves. Stand there, in the imagination of your deep memory, at the tree line. Feel the difference in the air. In the deep forest, the air was still, heavy, and wet. Here, on the edge of the open plains, the air is alive. It moves. The wind sweeps across the miles of undulating grass, carrying with it the scent of dust, the dry perfume of sage, and the terrifying musk of invisible beasts. The sun is no longer a dappled, gentle presence. It is a tyrant in the sky, a burning eye that bakes the earth and demands endurance. In this shifting landscape, the old ways of the solitary tyrant, the alpha male with the dagger-like fangs, began to lose their potency. The sheer brutality of the Fang was becoming a liability in a world that demanded something entirely new: connection. Consider the old king of the Miocene. He was built for the telephone booth of the jungle. His strategy was simple: claim a fruit tree, bear his ivory weapons, and defend that single point in space against all comers. He was a gladiator in a cage. But the savanna is not a cage, it is an ocean. The food here is not concentrated in a single defensible fig tree. It is scattered. There are tubers hidden in the hard earth a mile to the west. There is a carcass to be scavenged a mile to the east. There are nuts to be cracked in a grove to the south. The solitary dominance of the silverback, ruling by fear, was suddenly mathematically impossible. A single male, no matter how long his canines, no matter how thick his neck muscles, cannot guard a square mile of open grass. He cannot patrol the perimeter of a world that has no walls. The energy required to maintain the old system of despotism was becoming a fatal tax. The male who spent his days roaring and chasing rivals was a male who was starving. He was burning calories on aggression in an environment that demanded he spend calories on travel. And there was a darker, more pressing reality: the predators. In the shadows of the forest, the leopards were dangerous, yes, but there were places to hide. In the open light of the Pliocene savanna, the monsters were larger, faster, and they hunted in packs. The saber-toothed cats, the giant hyenas, the ancestors of the lions, they roamed this new ocean of grass like sharks. A lone ape, separated from the group by his own aggression, was not a king. He was a snack. The solitary tyrant, once the pinnacle of evolution, was becoming a vulnerability. The environment was asking a terrifying question of our ancestors: How do you survive when you are slow, small, and armed only with teeth that are shrinking? The answer lay in the whispering of a new world. It was a subtle pressure that began to build within the genome, a quiet shifting of the survival logic. It suggested that perhaps the strongest were not those who could kill the most effectively, but those who could care the most deeply. Let us examine the biography of the body during this transition. We often speak of evolution as survival of the fittest, invoking images of battle and blood. But often, it is survival of the friendliest. It is the survival of those who can endure the long night together. As the climate cooled and the food sources shifted, the survival of the young became more precarious. An infant born on the savannah is a fragile thing. It cannot cling to a mother's fur while she swings through the trees, because there are no trees. It must be carried. It must be protected from the cold winds of the night. It requires more calories to grow the rapidly expanding brain that this complex environment demands. A mother, alone, struggling to gather scattered food while carrying a helpless infant, is a tragedy waiting to happen. If she relies on a male who is only interested in fighting other males for status, she, and her genetic legacy, are doomed. The aggressive male, constantly warring for rank, leaves his offspring vulnerable to the hyena and the cold. He is a deadbeat dad, in evolutionary terms, investing in his ego rather than his progeny. But imagine a different kind of male, a mutant of temperament. Perhaps his testosterone levels are slightly lower. Perhaps his canines are slightly shorter, less impressive in a display but functional enough for eating. He does not spend his day posturing at the edge of the troop. Instead, he spends his day gathering. He finds a clutch of bird eggs. He finds a rich patch of tubers. And then, he does something revolutionary. He does not eat them all right there. He carries them back. This act, provisioning, is the seed of civilization. It is the moment the sword is traded for the basket. But you cannot carry food in your mouth if your mouth is a weapon. You cannot carry food in your hands if you are walking on your knuckles to support a massive, heavy head. The logic of the body is interconnected. The reduction of the fang, the softening of the face, the freeing of the hands, and the baring of the soul, they are all part of the same silent song. The male who stayed, who provided, who chose presence over dominance, began to carve a new path. He was not the alpha in the traditional sense. He might have been smaller, he might have been quieter, but his children survived. And because they survived, they carried his genes, the genes for smaller teeth, for lower aggression, for cooperation, into the future. This was the sexual selection of the soul. We must give credit to the females of this ancient epoch. In the mating dance of the Pliocene, the female gaze began to shift. The massive fangs, once a turn-on signifying raw power, began to look like a liability. They signaled a male who would likely die young in a violent skirmish, or who would turn his aggression against her and the child. The females began to choose the provider over the fighter. They selected for kindness. They selected for the ability to share. And over thousands of generations, this preference sculpted the male face. The jutting snout receded. The terrifying ridges of bone above the eyes smoothed out. The teeth leveled. We were domesticating ourselves. This process is known as self-domestication. Just as we would later tame the wolf into the dog, breeding out the aggression and breeding in the loyalty, we first did it to ourselves. The environment was the breeder, and the trait being selected for was tolerance. Picture a night on the early savannah. The sun has dipped below the horizon, leaving a sky bruised with indigo and violet. The temperature drops rapidly, the dry air biting at the skin. The group gathers together. They do not have fire yet. That is a gift for a later chapter. But they have the warmth of their bodies. In the old world, the alpha would sit apart, guarding his space. But here, they huddle. The closeness is the survival strategy. Bodies press against bodies. The heartbeat of one calms the heartbeat of another. In this huddle, large fangs are a danger. You cannot rest your head on the shoulder of a companion if you are carrying knives in your mouth. You cannot groom the delicate fur of a child's face if your jaw is a trap of sharp bone. The physical intimacy required for warmth and safety demanded a disarmament. The body had to become safer to touch. The skin became more sensitive. The teeth became blunter. The social glue was replacing the social hierarchy. And deep within the brain, the chemistry was changing. The high tides of testosterone were receding, making way for the gentler currents of oxytocin and serotonin, the chemicals of bonding, of trust, of love. These are the ancient molecules that allowed us to look at a stranger and see a potential ally rather than a certain enemy. This period, this whispering of a new world, was a time of immense biological bravery. It is easy to evolve a sharper claw or a thicker shell. It is the path of least resistance. But to evolve vulnerability, to evolve a face that is open, to evolve a mouth that cannot kill, that is a gamble of cosmic proportions. It was a wager that cooperation would be more powerful than coercion. Imagine an ancestor, Ardipithecus perhaps, moving through the dappled light of the woodland edge. He is a mosaic creature, just like his environment. He climbs trees with long arms, but he walks on two legs when on the ground. He has the brain of an ape, but the teeth of something else. He encounters a rival male at a food source. In the deep past, this would be a fight to the death. The fangs would bare, the blood would spill. But now, there is a pause, a hesitation. They look at each other. The tension is there, the ancient instinct to strike. But the new instinct, the whisper, intervenes. They grunt, they posture, but they do not bite. They tolerate. They feed side by side, wary but peaceful. This tolerance is the superpower of our species. It allowed us to live in larger groups. It allowed us to pool our knowledge. It allowed us to learn from one another. A solitary genius in the forest dies with his secrets, but in a tolerant group, a discovery by one becomes the property of all. The collective brain begins to form. The silence of the primeval forest, once broken only by roars and screams, was now filled with a new sound, the chatter of connection, the contact calls of the group, keeping track of one another in the tall grass. The murmurs of reassurance. The roots of language were not growing from the roar of the lion, but from the cooing of the mother and the grunt of the cooperating male. But the transition was not easy. Do not mistake this for a Garden of Eden. It was a time of desperate struggle. The predators were ruthless. The climate was chaotic. Many lineages failed. Many experiments in being hominid went extinct, their bones turning to dust in the Rift Valley, their stories lost to the wind. The ones who survived, our ancestors, were the ones who leaned into the change. They were the ones who accepted the sacrifice. They gave up the weapon that made them feel safe, the Fang, in exchange for the only thing that could actually save them, each other. As the eons dragged on, the landscape continued to dry. The trees became fewer, the grass taller. The training wheels of the woodland were being removed. We were being pushed out into the full exposure of the open plain. And we went not as armored knights, but as naked, soft-skinned, small-toothed beings holding hands in the dark. We carried the memory of the forest in our feet, which still curved slightly as if to grasp a branch. We carried the memory of the violence in our adrenaline, which still surged when a shadow moved. But in our mouths, the change was permanent. The crown of ivory was gone. The heavy jaw was lightening. The face was opening up, becoming a canvas for the complex emotions that were bubbling up from the expanding brain. The whispering had become a conversation. The environment had asked its question, "Can you lay down your swords?" And in the quiet hum of the genome, across 1,000,000 years of twilight and dawn, our ancestors whispered back, "Yes." And so, the stage was set for the next great leap. The hands, freed from the burden of walking and the burden of violence, were itching for a new purpose. The mind, liberated from the constant noise of aggression, was hungry for a new kind of tool. The fire was waiting in the stone. The word was waiting in the throat. But first, we had to learn to stand together, toothless and terrified, under the vast, indifferent stars of the Pliocene night. The wind blows across the savannah, rustling the golden stalks. It sounds like a sigh. It sounds like the earth exhaling the past, making room for the breath of the future. The verdant shadow is gone. The age of the smile has begun. And so we arrive at the quietest revolution in the history of the earth. It did not begin with the crash of a meteor, nor the tectonic groan of a continent splitting apart. It began in the silence of the microscopic world, in the twisting spiral darkness of the germline. We are drifting now into the deeper currents of the Pliocene, perhaps 4,000,000 years ago, a time when the world was vast, wild, and indifferent to the small, hairy creatures huddling on the edges of the drying forests. It was here, in the invisible architecture of the genome, that a mutation occurred, or perhaps more accurately, a cascading series of them, flowing like a gentle, persistent stream over thousands of generations. To the observer, nothing would have seemed different on any given day. The sun still rose hot and white over the Rift Valley. The cicadas still sang their deafening chorus in the acacia groves. But deep within the marrow, deep within the cellular instructions that knit bone from blood, a subtle editing was taking place. The manuscript of the killer was being rewritten. In the cradle of the jaw, the instructions for the massive canine, that ancient ivory stalagmite that had defined status and survival for eons, began to fade. The biological command to grow large, grow sharp, grow terrifying was being muffled. It was not a sudden erasure, but a gradual dimming, like a fire dying down in the hours before dawn. The dagger began to shrink. The terrifying projection of bone, which had once extended far past the lip, interlocking with the lower jaw in a grimace of war, began to retreat into the gum line. The roots, once deep anchors meant to withstand the violent torque of a killing bite, became shallower, less robust. This was a biological gamble of the highest order. To the evolutionary eye, peering down from the safety of the present, this transformation might have looked like madness. It looked like a disarmament in a world of monsters. Picture the landscape of this era. It was not a garden of safety. It was a theater of apex predators. The saber-toothed cats, Meganterion and Homotherium, stalked the tall grass, their own canines growing to grotesque, triumphant lengths, swords of bone capable of piercing the skull of an elephant. The giant hyenas, with jaws capable of crushing the femur of a wildebeest, prowled the twilight. For a small, slow ape to voluntarily lay down its primary weapon in such a neighborhood seems counterintuitive, a recipe for extinction. And yet, the softening of the stone continued, relentless and invisible. Imagine the face of this changing ape as he sits by a waterhole, catching his reflection in the stillness of the pool. The heavy jutting snout, the muzzle of the beast, is beginning to recede. The face is becoming flatter, less horizontal, more vertical. The terrifying visage, built for intimidation, is becoming less beastly, more open. The distinct ridge of bone above the eyes, the supraorbital torus, remains thick, shadowing the gaze, but the lower face is pulling back, tucking itself in. This physical transformation was not happening in isolation. It was the outer manifestation of an inner alchemy. The specific genes that drove aggression, the genes that flooded the developing fetus with high doses of testosterone and directed the neural crest cells to build heavy, armored faces, were dialing down. This phenomenon is what modern science calls self-domestication. Just as the wolf, over thousands of years of association with man, would eventually soften into the dog, losing its long snout, its aggressive reactivity, and its massive teeth to become a creature of connection, we were doing it to ourselves, millions of years before we ever met a wolf. We were the first domesticates. We were taming the wildness within our own blood. The mechanism of this change lies in the mysterious migration of neural crest cells during embryonic development. These cells are the master builders of the face. They form the cartilage, the bone, the teeth, and the pigment. But they also form the adrenal glands, the seat of the fight-or-flight response, the pump of adrenaline and cortisol. There is a deep biological link between the shape of our faces and the temper of our souls. As nature selected for gentler temperaments, for males who were less reactive, more tolerant, more willing to share, it inadvertently selected for the physical traits of youth. The adrenal glands shrank. The wash of aggression hormones lessened. And because the same cells that build the adrenal glands also build the snout and the teeth, the face softened in unison with the spirit. We were becoming pedomorphic, retaining the traits of the child into adulthood. A baby ape has a flat face. A baby ape has small teeth. A baby ape is curious, playful, and non-violent. By retaining these juvenile characteristics, we were hacking the biological clock. We were becoming the species that never fully grew up, the species that kept the open, defenseless face of the infant throughout our entire lives. But let us step out of the biology textbook and into the sensory reality of the ancestor living through this change. Let us witness the day of the soft jaw. The dawn breaks over the mosaic savanna, a landscape of golden grass punctuated by islands of scrub oak and fig trees. A male hominid, perhaps an Australopithecus afarensis, wakes in the crook of a lower branch. He is smaller than the giants of the past. When he yawns, stretching his arms to the sky, the flash of white in his mouth is modest. The canines are still pointed, still visible, but they no longer lock his jaw. They no longer terrify. He descends to the ground, his feet finding purchase in the cooling dust. The air smells of dry sage and the distant metallic scent of rain. He is hungry. In the old world, the world of the Fang, his morning would have been dominated by the stress of hierarchy. He would have had to scan the troop, checking the location of the alpha, ensuring he did not cross an invisible line that would result in a slashed shoulder or a punctured ear. But today, the dynamic is different. The tension in the troop is lower. He moves toward a patch of disturbed earth where the females are digging for tubers. A larger male is already there, pulling a gnarl of fibrous roots from the ground. In the Miocene, this proximity would have triggered a display, a roar, a baring of the daggers, a physical contest. But the softening has done its work. The larger male looks up. His brow is heavy, but his eyes are calm. The adrenaline, that sharp, acidic chemical that demands violence, does not surge as it once did. The reactive aggression has been dampened. He grunts, a low, rumbling sound of acknowledgement, and shifts slightly to the left, making space. Our protagonist sits. He digs. They eat side by side. The only sound is the rhythmic grinding of molars against fiber, the rotary motion of jaws that are no longer locked by the pillars of canines. This moment of peace is the legacy of the mutation. It is the victory of the small tooth. Because they are not fighting, they are eating. Because they are not posturing, they are watching the horizon. And because they are together, calm and fed, they spot the leopard moving through the tall grass long before a solitary, stressed-out tyrant would have seen it. A warning cry goes up, not a roar of challenge, but a sharp, staccato bark of communication. The troop moves as one, scrambling up the nearest cluster of rocks. They survive not because they are lethal, but because they are coordinated. The softening of the individual has led to the hardening of the group. Yet, we must not romanticize this vulnerability. The loss of the Fang was a terrifying exposure. There were nights when the darkness felt heavier, when the absence of a weapon left a phantom ache in the mouth. Imagine a night when the fire has not yet been tamed, and the moon is hidden behind heavy clouds. The ancestor huddles with his kin in a shallow cave, the smell of damp limestone and bat guano filling his nose. Outside, the breathing of the Pleistocene monsters is audible, the heavy huffing of a predator scenting the air. In this moment, the ancestor feels the frailty of his own body. He runs his tongue over his teeth. They are small. They are flat. Against the creature outside, they are useless stones. He has no claws. He has no thick hide. He has only the soft skin of his face and the fragile bones of his hands. The fear is a cold knot in the stomach. This vulnerability forced a compensation. Since the body could no longer be the weapon, the mind had to become the fortress. The energy that was once diverted to growing thick ridges of bone and massive roots of ivory was now freed up. It flowed upward, into the cranium. It fueled the expansion of the neocortex. If I cannot bite you, I must outwit you. If I cannot terrify you with my face, I must befriend you with my face. The grimace of the predator was softening into something that would eventually become a face capable of distinct expression. Without the obstruction of the muzzle, the intricate musculature of the face began to refine. The levator labii, the zygomaticus major, these delicate bands of muscle could now pull the skin into 1,000 subtle shapes. The twitch of a lip could signal annoyance. The crinkle of an eye could signal playfulness. The raising of an eyebrow could ask a question. We were trading the binary language of the Fang, I kill/I submit, for the infinite poetry of the face. The face became a billboard of the soul. It became a high-fidelity transmitter of emotional states. In a cooperative group, it is vital to know who is trustworthy, who is angry, who is afraid. The disarmed face is the most honest face. It cannot hide behind a weapon. It is naked. This nakedness fostered trust. You could look at another and see instantly the weather of their internal world. This was the birth of empathy. To see fear on another's face and to feel it in your own body, this is a mechanism that requires a face capable of showing fear without turning it into a threat. We were becoming less like the wolf and more like something entirely new. And yet, the wolf was not entirely gone. It was merely sleeping. The potential for violence remained, written in the code, but it was being brought under executive control. We were evolving from reactive creatures, slaves to the immediate impulse, to proactive creatures, capable of planning, of restraint, of choosing when to fight and when to embrace. As the generations faded into dust, forming the layers of the fossil record, the trend continued relentlessly. Australopithecus gave way to Homo habilis. Habilis gave way to Erectus. With each step, the face grew flatter, the teeth grew smaller, the brain grew larger. The softening of the stone was also changing the way we loved. In the old order, mating was often a matter of coercion, a right taken by the holder of the longest fang. But as the fang shrank, the power dynamic shifted. The female choice became the dominant force. The pair bond began to emerge, a fragile, tentative agreement between male and female to stick together, to raise the helpless, large-brained infant together. The male who could bring food, who could hold the child without accidentally goring it, who could smile rather than snarl, he was the one who left his legacy. The dad was being invented. Let us return to the image of the mutation, the gentle stream of change. It is easy to think of evolution as a series of improvements, of getting stronger and faster. But here, the improvement was a reduction. We advanced by retreating. We conquered by yielding. It is a profound lesson carved in our own anatomy. Strength does not always look like a sword. Sometimes, strength looks like a small, flat tooth. Sometimes, survival belongs to the gentle. As you drift deeper into this story, feel the shape of your own jaw. It is a lightweight structure, a delicate arch of bone. It is not built for war. It is built for words. It is built for chewing cooked food. It is built for kissing. The softening of the stone was the moment we stepped out of the food chain of brute force and into the web of social complexity. We became the soft-mouthed giants, the anomaly of the animal kingdom. We were the creatures who did not need to carry a weapon in our mouths to survive the night, because we carried the ultimate weapon in our minds, the ability to work together. And so, the night of the Pliocene deepens. The stars wheel overhead, indifferent watchers of the drama below. The small-toothed apes huddle together, their breathing synchronized. They are dreaming. And in their dreams, they are not tearing flesh with ivory daggers. They are calling out to one another across the void. They are beginning to speak. The silence of the genome has spoken, and its word is peace. The weapon has been laid down. The journey of the human heart has begun. The wind shifts across the vast, undulating ocean of the Serengeti Plain. It is a dry, restless wind, carrying the scent of dust, the musk of drying grass, and the metallic tang of distant rain. We are standing in the center of the world, 3 million years ago, in the golden hour of the Pliocene. The sun is beginning its descent, painting the sky in bruises of violet and burnt orange, casting long, exaggerated shadows that stretch across the earth like grasping fingers. Here, in this immensity of light and space, stands a figure. It is upright, a silhouette against the burning horizon. It is small, barely 4 feet tall, and covered in a thin layer of dust-matted hair. This is our ancestor. This is the moment of the great exposure. Consider the immense bravery of this transition. To understand the courage required to simply exist in this landscape, we must first understand the profound nakedness of the creature. Evolution has stripped away the armor. The long, interlocking canines, those ivory daggers that once locked the jaw in place for a killing bite, are gone. The heavy brow ridges are thinning. The massive neck muscles, once built to absorb the shock of a violent struggle, are reducing. We stand on the savannah, naked of claw and fang. We are smaller than the wildebeest. We are slower than the antelope. We are softer than the leopard. To the cold, calculating eye of the natural selection, we appear to be a mistake, a biological error, a creature that has discarded its weapons in the middle of a battlefield. How did we survive? How did this lineage not perish in the jaws of the great cats? To answer this, we must descend into the visceral reality of the prehistoric night. The sun slips below the rim of the earth, and the temperature plummets. The silence of the day is replaced by the symphony of the hunt. The air fills with the chittering of nocturnal insects and the low, resonant huffing of predators waking from their slumber. In the tall grass, the Dinophilus waits. It is a terrifying specialist, a cat built for the ambush, with teeth designed to pierce the skull. Further out, the Meganterion, a dirk-toothed cat, prowls with a silent, lethal grace. These are monsters of muscle and reflex, engines of destruction perfected over millions of years. They look at our ancestor and they do not see a rival. They see protein. They see a slow, defenseless biped with no shell, no venom, and a mouthful of flat, harmless stones. Imagine the fear. It is not the anxiety of modern life, the worry over a deadline or a bill. It is a primal chemical terror that lives in the gut. It is the freezing of the blood when a twig snaps in the darkness. It is the realization that you are the softest thing in a world of hard edges. And yet, we are here. The lineage did not break. The ancestors did not vanish into the stomach of the Pleistocene. They survived because the loss of the Fang created a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. As the biological weapon receded, a new kind of weaponry was being forged, not of bone, but of spirit. The answer lies in what replaced the Fang. As the tooth receded, the mind expanded. The loss of the weapon forced us to rely on each other. If I cannot defend myself with my bite, I must defend myself with my tribe. This is the birth of the vulnerable warrior. It is a paradox. Our weakness was the catalyst for our greatest strength. The vulnerability created a necessity for social bonding that was unprecedented in the animal kingdom. We traded the strength of the individual bone for the strength of the collective bond. Let us witness a scene from this new reality. It is mid-morning. The troop is moving across an open stretch of scrubland, exposing themselves to the dangerous open sky. A shadow moves in the periphery. A pack of hyenas lurking, testing the perimeter. In the old days, the days of the solitary tyrant, the response would have been individual. The strongest male would have charged, his fangs flashing, while the others scattered. But today, something different happens. A sentinel barks, a sharp, guttural sound. It is not a roar of dominance, but an alarm of care. The troop freezes. Then, instead of scattering, they coalesce. They flow together like mercury. The mothers grab the infants. The males step forward, not as solitary heroes, but as a line. They stand shoulder to shoulder. They scream. They wave their arms. They throw stones, the first projectiles, the first extension of the will beyond the body. They present a wall of noise and chaos. To the hyenas, this is confusing. They are used to prey that runs. They are used to panic. They are not used to a superorganism that stands its ground. The phalanx of the defenseless has formed, a brotherhood and sisterhood of the weak, finding that together they are more terrifying than any solitary beast with knives in its mouth. The hyenas hesitate. The calculation of risk shifts. To attack this screaming, throwing wall is to risk injury. And in the wild, injury is death. The predators turn and lope away, seeking easier game. The troop relaxes. The adrenaline fades. And then the most important work begins. They touch. In the absence of the fang, the hand becomes the primary instrument of social maintenance. They groom. Long, dark fingers comb through the fur of a neighbor, picking out ticks, soothing the skin. This is not merely hygiene, it is alchemy. With every stroke of the hand, the brain releases a cascade of opioids and oxytocin. It is a chemical bridge-building trust between two nervous systems. The grooming says, "I am here. I am safe. I will watch your back if you watch mine." The smaller the tooth, the tighter the circle of trust. The reduction of the canine allowed faces to get closer without the subconscious threat of violence. We could nuzzle. We could press our foreheads together. We could look into each other's eyes. And this is crucial. We are one of the few species with visible sclera, the whites of the eyes. In a world of deception, white eyes are a disadvantage. They show exactly where you are looking. If you are a predator hiding in the grass, you want dark eyes to conceal your intent. But for us, the white eye was an adaptation for cooperation. It allowed us to signal intent to our kin without speaking. A wideness of the eye for fear, a narrowing for suspicion, a glance to the left to signal a silent approach. The eyes became the new fangs, projecting power and information not through cutting, but through connecting. This deep reliance on the social web exerted a tremendous pressure on the brain. To live in a group of 50 or 100 individuals, all relying on each other for survival, is cognitively exhausting. You must remember who is a friend and who is a rival. You must remember who groomed you yesterday and who owes you a favor. You must read the subtle micro-expressions of the face. This is the social brain hypothesis. The brain did not grow primarily to solve the puzzle of the environment. It grew to solve the puzzle of the tribe. The neocortex expanded to manage the complex ledger of love and debt. As the jaw shrank, freeing the skull from the heavy temporal muscles, the cranium vaulted upward to house this expanding computer of connection. We became the obsession of each other. The vulnerable warrior fights with relationships. Let us return to the night. The sun has vanished, and the darkness is absolute. The troop retreats to a grove of trees or a rocky overhang. This is the most dangerous time. A single hominid, sleeping alone, is a corpse in waiting. But they do not sleep alone. They create a pile of bodies. The warmth of the kin is the only shield against the cold. In this tangle of limbs, there is a profound safety. The vulnerability of sleep, that state of total unconsciousness, is only possible because of the pact of the group. One set of eyes stays open, then another. They take turns. The sentinel behavior is the rent we pay for living in the collective. The one who watches protects the dreams of the many. This interdependence fundamentally changed the nature of our existence. In the world of the Fang, the self is the primary unit of survival. In the world of the bond, the we becomes the unit. The death of a member is no longer just a loss of a competitor. It is an amputation of the self. It is a loss of a protector, a food finder, a friend. This is the origin of grief. We grieve because we need. We mourn because the survival of the individual is no longer possible without the survival of the whole. The depth of our sorrow is a measure of the depth of our necessary connection. As we drift through the eons, moving from the Pliocene into the Pleistocene, the stakes get higher. The climate fluctuates wildly. Ice ages come and go, locking the world in glaciers and then drowning it in meltwater. The vulnerable warrior is tested again and again. There were bottlenecks, moments in history where our population dropped to a few thousand. We hovered on the brink of extinction. The darkness was closing in. Any other species, stripped of its natural weapons, would have faded into the fossil record, a curiosity of failed evolution. But we held on. We held on to each other. When the drought came and the fruits withered, the grandmother shared her knowledge of the hidden tubers. When the cold came, the hunter shared the warmth of the pelt. When the predator came, the tribe shared the danger. The body remembers this transition. It is written in your skin. Think of the phenomenon of goosebumps. When you are cold or afraid or moved by a powerful piece of music, the tiny muscles at the base of your hair follicles contract. In our ancient ancestors, covered in fur, this would have fluffed up their coat, trapping air for warmth or making them look larger to a predator. Today, we are naked. The hair is gone, but the reflex remains, a vestigial echo of the time when we tried to make ourselves look bigger than we were. It is a ghost of the vulnerability we carried. And think of the blush. We are the only species that blushes. When we feel shame or embarrassment or self-consciousness, the blood rushes to our face. It is a signal of social surrender. It says, I know I have transgressed. I care what you think. Please do not reject me. It is a mechanism of the tribe, a way to repair the social bond before it breaks. It is the physiology of apology. A creature with fangs does not need to blush. It bites. A creature without fangs must negotiate. The vulnerable warrior also learned to master the ultimate tool, the tool of teaching. A fang is a static object. It cannot be improved, only sharpened. But a strategy can be taught. A technique for cracking a nut, a method for tracking a gazelle, a song for remembering the watering holes. These can be passed down. The culture began to accumulate. It became a non-genetic shield. We built a fortress not of stone, but of knowledge. The wisdom of the dead began to protect the living. We became a time-binding species, able to access the experiences of ancestors we had never met. Imagine a young Homo erectus sitting by the first flicker of a controlled fire. He looks at the elder. The elder has no teeth left. They have been worn down to the gum by a lifetime of grit. In the animal kingdom, this elder should be dead. He cannot chew. He cannot fight. But the young one takes a piece of meat, pre-chews it, or pounds it with a stone, and gives it to the old man. Why? Because the old man holds the map. He holds the memory of the great drought. He holds the knowledge of the medicinal herbs. He is a library in a frail body. The compassion of the tribe keeps the library open. This is the triumph of the vulnerable warrior. We redefined strength. Strength was no longer physical dominance. It was the capacity to keep the weak alive so that the strong could learn from them. As you lie in the safety of your modern night, consider the legacy of this vulnerability. You are a descendant of the fearful. You are the child of the ones who ran to each other, not away from each other. The anxiety you feel when you are alone, the deep comfort you feel when you hear a loved one's voice, the instinctive need to be part of a group. These are not modern neuroses. They are ancient survival mechanisms. They are the echoes of the savannah. We are a species that was forged in the realization of our own fragility. We looked at the lion, and then we looked at our empty hands, and we made a choice. We chose the difficult, messy, beautiful work of cooperation. We chose to weave a net of social safety so tight that it could catch us when we fell. The vulnerable warrior walks forward, out of the shadows of the past, carrying nothing but a heart open to connection and a mind sharp with the knowledge that we are only safe when we are together. The fangs are gone, buried in the dust of the Miocene. In their place, we have the smile, the word, and the hand that reaches out in the dark to say, "You are not alone." And in that connection, we found a power that no predator could ever match. We found the power to inherit the earth. Sleep now, surrounded by the invisible phalanx of your kin, protected by the ancient contract of the tribe. You are safe, because you are connected. We stand now at the threshold of a biological paradox, a moment of deep mystery, where the hard logic of the wild was bent into a shape of softness. To understand the gravity of this transition, we must first immerse ourselves in the brutal binary language of the natural world that surrounded our ancestors. Picture a twilight encounter on the edge of the Pleistocene tundra, or perhaps deep within the scrublands of the ancient rift. A wolf stands over a kill, its hackles raised, a ridge of coarse hair standing against the wind. A rival approaches. The wolf lowers its head, ears pinning back against the skull, and the lips curl upward. What is revealed is a flash of white bone, the snarl. In the vast majority of the animal kingdom, to show one's teeth is a declaration of war. It is the unsheathing of the biological sword. It is a universal signal that transcends species, understood by the bear, the lion, and the primate alike. The message is absolute. I am armed. I am prepared to sever flesh. Back away or bleed. The baring of teeth is the last warning before the violence begins, a visual scream meant to trigger the flight response in an enemy. And yet, if you look into the face of a human being, your own face, reflected in a pool of water or a pane of glass, you will find that this ancient signal has been inverted. We, alone among the great apes, bare our teeth to say, "I love you." We show our bones to welcome a stranger. We retract our lips not to bite, but to bond. This is the alchemy of the smile. It is the great reversal, the moment we took the machinery of terror and transmuted it into the machinery of peace. How did such a profound inversion occur? How did a threat become a greeting? To answer this, we must look at the mouth not just as a portal for food, but as a theater of evolution. As the millennia drifted by, and the crown of ivory, the massive canine, receded into the gum line, the visual landscape of the human mouth changed. When an ancient ancestor, perhaps Homo habilis or early Homo erectus, pulled back their lips in a moment of excitement or fear, they no longer revealed a row of daggers. The terrifying interlocking spikes that once defined the primate visage were gone. In their place was a row of harmless equal stones. The dental arcade had become a parabolic curve of flat, grinding surfaces. This physical disarmament was the necessary precursor to the social revolution of the smile. You cannot smile with a dagger. A face that carries a lethal weapon can never truly look peaceful. The threat is always implicit in the anatomy. But with the leveling of the teeth, the gesture of lip retraction was sanitized. It was stripped of its inherent violence. The biological gun was unloaded, but the behavior itself, the pulling back of the lips, did not vanish. Evolution rarely discards a behavior entirely. Instead, it repurposes it, bending old habits into new tools. We believe that the human smile began its life not as an expression of joy, but as an expression of fear. Travel back in time to a tense standoff in the social hierarchy of an early hominid troop. A subordinate male, smaller and younger, finds himself too close to a dominant alpha. The alpha turns, a low rumble in his chest. The subordinate is terrified. His adrenaline spikes, his muscles tense. In a reflex deep within his nervous system, his lips pull back tight against his teeth. He is mimicking the snarl of the predator, but with a crucial difference. His teeth are clamped shut. He is not preparing to bite. He is doing the opposite. He is showing that his jaw is closed, that his weapons, such as they are sheathed. This is the silent bared teeth display, a gesture seen in chimpanzees and macaques to this day. It is a grimace of panic. It screams, "I am frightened. I am submissive. I am not a threat to you. Please do not hurt me." It is a signal of appeasement, a white flag waved in the face of aggression. For hundreds of thousands of years, this was likely the primary function of the smile. It was a shield of submission used to deflect the wrath of the powerful. It was the nervous grin of the apology. But as our species moved deeper into the practice of cooperation, as the vulnerable warrior began to rely more on the bond than the blow, the meaning of the signal began to drift. The environment of the Paleolithic was harsh. Ice ages that locked the world in white silence, droughts that turned the savanna to dust. In these extremes, the strict hierarchies of the past began to soften into networks of mutual aid. The dominant and the submissive roles became less rigid. Friends needed to reassure friends. Parents needed to reassure children. The fear grin began to lose its edge of terror. It softened. The tight rictus grimace of the subordinate evolved into a looser, more open expression. When two hunters met in the tall grass, uncertain of each other's intentions, one might flash this bared teeth display. "I am harmless," the face said. "I am safe," the other face replied. Over eons, the neural pathways rewired themselves. The connection between the gesture and the emotion shifted from the amygdala, the seat of fear, to the centers of reward and social connection. The signal transformed from "I am afraid of you" to "I am happy to be with you." The "I surrender" became "I welcome." This is the alchemy. We took the lead of fear and turned it into the gold of joy. But this transformation required more than just a change in meaning. It required a complete reconstruction of the face itself. To understand the smile, we must treat the facial muscles as characters in their own right, the unsung heroes of our humanity. Beneath the skin of your face lies a complex web of flesh, a biological puppetry system that is unique in the animal kingdom. In most mammals, the facial muscles are broad sheets, designed to twitch the skin to shake off flies or to open and close the orifices. But in the human lineage, these muscles fractured. They split into tiny, specialized bands, each capable of independent movement. Consider the zygomaticus major. It is a slender ribbon of muscle that anchors on the cheekbone and stretches down to the corner of the mouth. It has one job, and one job only, to haul the corners of the lips upward toward the ears. It is the muscle of optimism. When it contracts, it defies gravity, lifting the face against the weight of the world. And consider the orbicularis oculi, the ring of muscle that encircles the eye. In the old world, its job was to squint, to protect the vision from the sun or a claw. But in the human story, it became the guarantor of truth. A fake smile, a polite social deception, uses only the mouth. It is a conscious cortical act. But a true smile, a smile of genuine delight, engages the eyes. The orbicularis contracts, crinkling the skin at the corners, creating the crow's feet that we are so eager to erase with creams, yet which are the very hallmark of our sincerity. This is the Duchenne smile, named for the neurologist who mapped the electricity of the face. It is an involuntary reflex, a direct line from the emotional brain to the skin. This anatomical complexity was expensive. Muscles require energy. Nerves require maintenance. The facial nerve, the seventh cranial nerve, became a superhighway of information, thickening and branching to control this new orchestra of expression. Why would natural selection invest so much in a face that could twitch and crinkle? Because in the dark of the Stone Age, the face was the only light we had. Imagine a night in the deep Pleistocene. The fire has burned down to embers. The darkness presses in, thick with the sounds of the unseen. A group of humans huddles together. They do not yet have complex sentences to explain the nuances of their feelings, but they have the firelight on their faces. One member of the tribe is anxious, hearing a sound in the dark. He looks to the elder. The elder does not speak. She simply turns her face to the light and smiles. It is a slow, calm contraction of the zygomaticus. The teeth are visible, those harmless stones gleaming faintly. The eyes crinkle. In that instant, a biochemical cascade is triggered in the anxious watcher. Mirror neurons, specialized cells in the brain that fire when we observe an action, ignite. The watcher's brain simulates the smile. His own facial muscles twitch in sympathy. And because the face and the feeling are linked, his internal state shifts. His heart rate slows. His cortisol drops. The smile of the elder has physically altered the biology of the younger. This is the facial feedback hypothesis writ large across evolutionary time. The smile became a tool of emotional contagion. It allowed us to synchronize our moods without a word. It allowed the calm of one to become the calm of many. It was a wireless transmission of safety. The smile became the glue of society, a way to de-escalate conflict without bloodshed. In the crowded caves and campsites of our ancestors, friction was inevitable. Food was stolen. Mates were jealous. Space was tight. In a species with fangs, these tensions are resolved with violence. But we had disarmed. We needed a new way to say, "I didn't mean it," or "Let's calm down." The sheepish smile, the nervous smile, the warm smile of apology. These became the diplomats of the Paleolithic. We could now resolve disputes with a gesture rather than a bite. The energy that once went into growing ivory tusks now flowed into the complex, twitching, dancing muscles of the face, allowing us to communicate joy, reassurance, shame, and empathy. And let us not forget the role of the infant in this story. The biography of the body is nowhere more poignant than in the face of a human baby. A human infant is born utterly helpless, a fetal ape born too soon, unable to cling or walk. Its only survival tool is its ability to solicit care. At around 6 weeks of age, a human baby does something that no other primate infant does so readily or so broadly. It smiles. This is the social smile. It is not gas. It is not a reflex. It is a calculated biological hook. When a mother, exhausted and hungry in the harsh conditions of the Ice Age, looked down at her fragile burden, and that burden looked back and beamed a toothless, gum-bearing grin, something profound happened in her brain. The reward centers flooded with dopamine. The bond was sealed. The smile of the baby is a survival weapon as potent as any claw. It ensures that the parent will not abandon it. It buys love with a contraction of the cheeks. This coevolution of the parent and the child, locked in a feedback loop of smiling, likely drove the refinement of the facial muscles even further. We became the species that selects for cuteness, for expressiveness, for the ability to share joy. But there is a shadow side to this alchemy, as there is with all great powers. As the face became a billboard, it also became a mask. The ability to control these muscles meant that we could, for the first time, lie with our bodies. We could smile when we were angry. We could smile when we were plotting. The false smile entered the repertoire. This introduced a new arms race, not of teeth, but of perception. As our ancestors learned to fake the signal, they also had to learn to decode it. We became obsessive readers of the face. We learned to look for the micro-expressions, the fleeting shadows of truth that pass across the eyes before the social mask slides into place. We became detectives of the spirit, constantly scanning the faces of our tribe to separate the Duchenne from the deceit. This cognitive pressure, the need to read the mind behind the smile, may have been one of the great drivers of human intelligence. We had to become psychologists to survive the social world we had created. As the glaciers retreated and the Neolithic Revolution brought us into the age of agriculture, the smile remained our primary currency. In the crowded villages of the first farmers, where strangers lived cheek by jowl, the smile was the passport. It was the signal that allowed trade to happen between people who did not speak the same language. It was the universal gesture that said, "I am human. You are human. Let us not kill each other today." Walk through a modern city today, and you will see the legacy of this ancient shift everywhere. You will see strangers passing on the street, flashing a quick, tight compression of the lips, the civil, inattention smile. It is a fossil of the fear grin, a quick signal of non-aggression. You will see friends laughing in a cafe, their mouths wide open, showing the full row of flat white teeth, the play face of the primate, repurposed for gossip and connection. You will see lovers gazing at each other, their faces softening, their pupils dilating, their smiles communicating a depth of belonging that goes back to the first fires. The teeth themselves, those silent witnesses, have remained modest. We spend fortunes straightening them and whitening them, trying to perfect the harmless stones. We are obsessed with the smile because it is our species' signature. The lion has its mane, the peacock has its tail, the human has its smile. So as you rest in the quiet of this night, become aware of the muscles of your own face. Feel the tension in the jaw, the ghost of the old bite, and let it go. Feel the corners of your mouth. They are held there by the zygomaticus, that ancient ribbon of optimism waiting for a reason to lift. Remember that every time you smile, you are reenacting a 4-million-year-old victory. You are proving that fear can be transformed into welcome. You are using the very anatomy that was once designed for war to wage peace. The fangs are gone, dissolved by the slow, gentle stream of time. In their place, we have been given a power that is far greater, the power to disarm an enemy, to comfort a child, and to bridge the abyss between two souls simply by baring our teeth. The alchemists of the Middle Ages sought to turn lead into gold and failed. But evolution, in its blind, plotting brilliance, succeeded. It took the leaden grimace of the cornered beast and turned it into the golden light of the human smile. And in that light, we found our way out of the darkness. The sun rises over the basin of the Turkana, casting long, sharp shadows across a landscape that is no longer the lush garden of our beginnings. It is 2 million years ago, and the world has grown harder. The soft fruit trees of the deep rainforest have retreated, leaving behind a patchwork of scrub, dry earth, and resilient thorny acacia. To survive here, one cannot be picky. To survive here, one must unlock the hidden calories of the earth, the hard shells, the fibrous roots, the tough husks that guard the energy of life. We stand at a pivotal junction in the engineering of the human machine. For millions of years, the jaw was a trap, a mechanism designed to snap shut and hold fast. But in the silence of the Pliocene, a mechanical revolution took place. It was not a revolution of fire or stone tools, but a revolution of bone and muscle. It was the liberation of the jaw. To understand this freedom, we must first understand the prison that came before. Let us cast our minds back to the cousins we left behind. The chimpanzee, the gorilla, the ancient proconsul. Look closely at the skull of a male gorilla. It is a masterpiece of intimidation. When he closes his mouth, the massive lower canines, pillars of ivory, slide into precise gaps in the upper jaw, known as the diastema. These teeth act like the rails of a train track. They guide the jaw into a single fixed position. This interlocking mechanism is a formidable weapon, locking the mouth into a permanent snarl of potential violence, but it is also a cage. Because the teeth interlock so deeply, the jaw is restricted to a simple vertical plane. It can open and it can shut. It acts as a hinge. The gorilla is a prisoner of his own weaponry. He can crush a stalk of celery, he can tear the skin of a fruit, but he cannot grind. His anatomy forbids the rotary dance of the millstone. But as our ancestors drifted away from the forest and the fangs began to recede, the rails were removed. The crown of ivory shrank back into the gum line. The diastema closed. The teeth became level, a uniform row of harmless stones. And with the disappearance of those interlocking pillars, the human mandible was suddenly, miraculously unchained. The jaw gained a new freedom. It could move side to side. It could rotate. It could slide forward and backward. The mouth was no longer just a clamp. It had become a pestle and mortar. This new motion, the rotary chew, was the quiet innovation that saved our species from extinction. It transformed the mouth into a versatile processing plant, capable of dismantling the toughest defenses of the plant kingdom. Imagine a day in the life of Paranthropus boisei, or perhaps a robust Australopithecine, moving through the dry season of the Rift Valley. The rains have failed, the fruits are gone, the landscape offers only resistance, tough sedges, underground tubers, and nuts with shells like stone. A specialist eater, like a fruit-dependent chimp, would starve here. He looks at a dry nut and sees a rock, but our ancestor looks at the nut and sees dinner. He picks it up with calloused, dexterous fingers. He places it between his molars, those massive, flat-surfaced grinding tables at the back of the mouth. And then he begins the motion. The jaw swings to the right, bites down, and slides to the left. Crunch. The shell shatters. But the work is not done. The meat inside is fibrous and tough. The jaw continues its rhythmic cycle, grinding, pulverizing, turning the tough matter into a swallowable paste. This sound, the rhythmic grinding of the gathering tribe, was a new acoustic signature on the savannah. The silence of the forest was no longer broken by the roar of the predator, but by the steady, communal milling of the hominids. It was the sound of survival. This rotary motion required a complete architectural overhaul of the skull. The muscles of mastication, the masseter and the temporalis, had to change their line of pull. In our cousins, these muscles are positioned for maximum vertical force, the killing bite. In us and our immediate ancestors, they shifted to maximize lateral leverage. The pterygoid muscles, hidden deep inside the skull, became the unsung heroes of this new era, guiding the jaw in its complex circular orbit. The temporomandibular joint, the hinge where the jaw meets the skull, had to evolve a new shape. It became a loose, slippery socket, allowing the condyle of the jaw to glide and skate across the base of the skull. It is a joint designed for mobility, for the complex choreography of the grind. But this adaptation was not without its cost. The evolutionary duality is always at play. A loose, mobile joint is less stable than a locked hinge. The human jaw is prone to dislocation, to the painful clicking of TMJ disorders, to the wear and tear of a lifetime of grinding. We traded the unbreakable stability of the clamp for the delicate versatility of the mill. It was a trade-off between power and potential. The potential was limitless. By unlocking the jaw, we unlocked the world. We became the great generalists of the earth. We were no longer tethered to a specific ecosystem. If the forest dried up, we could eat the roots of the savanna. If the savanna burned, we could eat the seeds of the scrubland. If the winter came, we could crack the frozen bones of scavenged carcasses to reach the marrow. This dietary flexibility is the hallmark of our lineage. While other species specialized, evolving sharper teeth for meat or longer intestines for leaves, we evolved a mouth that could do a little bit of everything. We became the jack of all trades of the digestive world. Consider the humble tuber. Buried deep beneath the hard-baked earth of the African plains, the tuber is a reservoir of water and starch. It is a survival bunker built by the plant. To access it, you need two things: the wit to find it and the jaw to chew it. A specialized carnivore cannot eat a tuber. Its slicing teeth would glide off the surface. A specialized folivore, leaf eater, cannot eat a tuber. It lacks the enamel thickness to handle the grit. But the liberated human jaw, with its thick enameled molars and rotary motion, could grind the tuber down, grit and all. This ability to extract energy from underground storage organs was a game changer. It meant that even in the harshest drought, when the surface world was dead and brown, our ancestors had a pantry buried beneath their feet. They could harvest the energy of the sun that had been stored months ago. The liberation of the jaw also reshaped the geography of our faces. As the need for massive canine roots vanished, the face could retreat. The heavy muzzle, which acted as a fulcrum for the vertical bite, was no longer necessary. The face flattened. The center of gravity of the head shifted back, balancing more perfectly atop the spine. This balance was crucial for our bipedal posture, for running, for scanning the horizon. And let us look deeper into the microscopic texture of the teeth themselves. Paleolithic anthropologists can read the history of a life in the scratches left on the enamel. This is the science of dental microwear. A tiger's tooth shows long vertical scratches from the shearing of meat. A chimp's tooth shows pits from the crushing of soft fruit. But the teeth of our ancestors? They are a chaotic map of complex scratches, vertical, horizontal, circular. They tell the story of a diverse, opportunistic diet. They tell the story of a creature that woke up and ate a lizard, at noon cracked some nuts, and in the evening chewed on a fibrous root. The history of our adaptability is etched in the calcium of our smile. This mechanical freedom was a gift of peace. It is a profound realization. By giving up the tools of murder, we gained the tools of survival. The energy that evolution once invested in growing weapons to fight our brothers was now invested in growing tools to feed our children. The mouth was no longer just a trap. It was a tool of adaptation. As the epoch of the Pliocene gave way to the volatile swings of the Pleistocene, this adaptability became our greatest asset. The climate began to flicker like a dying bulb, warm, cold, wet, dry, changing faster than biological evolution could keep up. A species locked into a single food source, dependent on a specific tree or a specific prey, is vulnerable to these rapid shifts. If your tree dies, you die. But the rotary chewers? They just changed the menu. We see this resilience in the fossil record. While the specialized nutcracker man, Paranthropus boisei, who took the rotary chewing to an extreme, developing massive cheek teeth and a crest like a mohawk to anchor his jaw muscles, eventually went extinct when his specific food sources vanished. The more generalized Homo line survived. We kept the rotary motion, but we didn't over-specialize. We kept our options open. And there is another layer to this liberation, one that touches on the very essence of our humanity, the act of chewing. In the animal kingdom, eating is often a frantic, competitive act. The predator wolfs down its meat before a rival can steal it. The primate stuffs its cheek pouches. But the rotary grind is slow. It takes time. To chew a tough root into a digestible pulp requires patience. This slowness transformed the meal. If you have to sit for an hour to chew your food, you are not running. You are not fighting. You are sitting. And if you are sitting with your tribe grinding away, you are bonding. The hearth of the mouth preceded the hearth of the fire. The shared rhythm of chewing created a space for social interaction. In the safety of the group, while the jaws worked the hard food, the eyes could watch, the hands could gesture, the sounds could flow. The dinner table conversation began millions of years before the table was invented. As we moved into the era of Homo erectus and later Homo heidelbergensis, the jaw continued to refine. The discovery of fire and the invention of cooking eventually took some of the burden off the jaw. Fire is an external stomach. It breaks down the fibers before they even enter the mouth. But the rotary motion remained. It is with us today. Watch a person eating a piece of bread. Watch the subtle, circular dance of the chin. It is an ancient movement, a biological memory of the time when we unlocked the cage of the canine and learned to eat the world. Even the wear patterns on our modern teeth tell this story. The dentist looks at your facets of wear, the flat spots on your molars, and sees the legacy of the grind. We are designed to wear down. We are designed to use our teeth as tools of reduction. There is a poetry in the mechanics of the temporomandibular joint. It is the only joint in the body that must work in perfect unison with its partner on the other side. You cannot move your left jaw without moving your right. They are a single functional unit, a bicondylar hinge. This unity requires a sophisticated neural control. The brain must coordinate the firing of dozens of muscles to ensure that the teeth meet perfectly, thousands of times a day, without shattering each other. A silent error in this code, a misalignment, causes pain, headaches, a dissonance in the skull. But when it works, as it does for most of us, most of the time, it is a symphony of motion. The liberation of the jaw also paved the way for the most uniquely human trait of all, speech. Consider the acoustics of the mouth. To produce the vowels and consonants of human language, the A, the E, the O, the crisp T, and the rolling R, the tongue needs space. It needs a vaulted ceiling. It needs a jaw that can drop and slide to change the shape of the resonant chamber. A mouth locked by massive canines is a rigid acoustic box. It can roar and it can hoot, but it struggles to articulate. But as the jaw loosened and the muzzle shortened, the oral cavity became a flexible instrument. The tongue, once cramped and limited to moving food, found itself in a spacious cathedral. It could tap against the roof of the mouth. It could flick against the teeth. It could shape the air. The rotary jaw, designed for food, became the architect of the word. We chewed our way to language. So the next time you eat a handful of almonds or chew on a raw carrot, pause for a moment. Feel the motion of your jaw. Feel it slide to the side, crush, and slide back. Listen to the sound inside your skull, the rhythmic crunching that is the soundtrack of our survival. You are performing a movement that saved your ancestors. You are using the tool of adaptation that allowed a small, hairless ape to conquer the planet. You are not just eating. You are exercising the freedom that was bought with the sacrifice of the Fang. The sun sets on the Pliocene scrubland. The tribe gathers for the evening meal. They are dusty, tired, and alive. They sit in a circle, cracking the hard nuts of the mongongo tree. The sound is a steady, comforting percussion. Crack, grind, crack, grind. It is the heartbeat of the species. The lions roar in the distance, hungry and specialized, trapped in their cycle of violence. But the hominids are fed. They have unlocked the energy of the earth with the key of their liberated jaws. And in the quiet satisfaction of the chew, they are finding the strength to face the long night and the long journey toward the stars. The jaw is no longer a weapon. It is a bridge between the hunger of the body and the bounty of the world. And we cross that bridge, one rotary grind at a time. The wind flows over the darkened landscape of the Pleistocene, a restless, invisible river moving through the acacia thorns and the tall, dry grass. It whistles through the canyons of the Great Rift, moaning against the stone, whispering through the leaves. For millions of years, this was the only voice the earth possessed, the incoherent, chaotic song of the elements. The wind could howl, but it could not name. It could scream, but it could not tell a story. In this ancient world, the soundscape was dominated by the raw percussion of survival, the roar of the lion, a terrifying bass note that vibrated in the sternum, the sharp staccato bark of the baboon, a signal of immediate panic, the hoot of the chimpanzee, carrying news of fruit or war across the canopy. These were sounds of the moment, biological alarms triggered by the sight of a leopard or the taste of a fig. They were immediate, emotional, and fleeting. They evaporated the moment they were uttered, leaving no echo in the mind. But deep within the anatomy of our ancestors, a quiet renovation was taking place. A transformation of the throat and the skull that would eventually capture the wind and shape it into something immortal. The liberation of the jaw, which had begun as a strategy for eating the hard fruits of the savannah, was about to bestow an even greater gift, one that would change the destiny of the planet forever. As the heavy, jutting snout of the ape receded, pulling back towards the cranium to balance the head atop the spine, the geometry of the mouth cavity underwent a radical change. In our primate cousins, the mouth is a long, horizontal tube designed primarily for the business of biting and swallowing. The tongue within it is long, flat, and cramped, a prisoner of the muzzle. It is an instrument of eating, not an instrument of art. But in the lineage of Homo, the face flattened. The teeth, once jagged peaks of dominance, settled into a neat parabolic row. The dental arcade widened and shortened, and as the face retracted, the oral cavity changed its dimensions. It became shorter from front to back, but deeper from top to bottom. The roof of the mouth, the hard palate, arched upward, creating a dome. Suddenly, the tongue found itself in a spacious, vaulted cathedral. This was the architectural prerequisite for the human voice. The mouth was no longer just a vestibule for food. It had become an acoustic chamber, a resonance hall similar to the body of a cello or the interior of a bell. The tongue, once a simple piston for pushing food down the gullet, became a master acrobat. In the spaciousness of this new human mouth, the tongue became shorter, thicker, and more muscular. It could curl, it could tap, it could hump up against the back of the throat or flick against the ridges of the teeth. But this acrobatic dance would have been impossible without the reduction of the fang. Imagine, if you will, trying to articulate the delicate sounds of human speech with 2-inch-long daggers protruding from your upper jaw. Try to say the word civilization with a mouthful of ivory obstructions. The air pushed up from the lungs would hit the barrier of the fangs and scatter. The seal of the lips, crucial for the P and B sounds, would be impossible to maintain. The precise friction required for the S and the F would be disrupted by the jutting bone. The large canine is a silencer of complexity. It occupies the very space needed for the tongue to make its subtle contacts. By losing the fang, by reducing the dental walls to a low, uniform height, we cleared the stage. We created a neutral space where the tongue could move without collision. The parabolic row of the human teeth is a perfect amphitheater for sound, allowing the air to flow smoothly over the edges of the incisors to create the hiss and the hush of our language. The T, the S, the D, these precise, delicate sounds are the children of this dental reduction. They are known to linguists as alveolar and dental consonants, sounds made by the tongue touching the ridge just behind the upper teeth. If those teeth were massive tusks, or if the gap between the upper and lower jaw was locked open by interlocking canines, these sounds would be physically impossible to produce. We would be left with only the vowels, the open-mouthed cries of emotion. We would have the O of surprise and the ah of pain, but we would lack the time, the sky, and the dream. We traded the ability to inflict a puncture wound for the ability to articulate a concept. But the renovation did not stop at the teeth. To fully understand the architecture of speech, we must look lower, into the darkness of the throat. Here, another silent accident of evolution was rewriting our destiny. In most mammals, the larynx, the voice box, sits high in the throat, tucked up right behind the nasal cavity. This is a brilliant survival adaptation. It allows a dog or a chimp to drink water and breathe at the same time. The liquid flows around the raised larynx and into the stomach, while the air flows through the larynx and into the lungs. It is a sealed system, a guarantee against choking. But in humans, something strange happened. As the brain expanded and the face flattened, the larynx began to descend. It slid down the throat, coming to rest much lower in the neck, opposite the cervical vertebrae. You can feel it now, the Adam's apple, sitting vulnerable and exposed in the middle of your throat. This descent created a new cavity above the vocal cords, the pharynx. This distinct L shape of the human vocal tract, the vertical tube of the throat meeting the horizontal tube of the mouth, is unique in nature. It gave us a dual-chambered instrument. By changing the shape of the pharynx and the mouth independently, we could produce a vast range of resonant frequencies. We could produce the quantal vowels, the I, U, and A sounds, that are the cornerstones of intelligible speech. But nature always demands a price. The evolutionary duality here is stark and terrifying. By lowering the larynx to gain the power of speech, we destroyed the safety seal of the throat. The food pipe and the windpipe now crossed paths. Every time a human being swallows, they risk death. If the epiglottis fails to close, food or water can fall into the lungs, leading to choking and asphyxiation. We are the only species that regularly dies because our food went down the wrong way. We are the only animals that can choke on our own dinner. Think of the immense evolutionary pressure against this trait. For a species to survive, it must eat and breathe safely. Yet nature selected for the descended larynx despite the risk of death. Why? Because the advantage of speech was so overwhelming. The ability to communicate complex ideas, to coordinate a hunt, to warn of danger, to teach a child, this was worth the risk of choking. The power of the word outweighed the safety of the swallow. Let us transport ourselves to a damp cave in the Dordogne or a rock shelter in the Levant 40,000 years ago. The sun has set. The cold of the Ice Age presses against the entrance, a physical weight. Inside, a small fire flickers, casting dancing shadows against the walls of stone. A group of humans huddles together. They are processing the day's kill, using flint scrapers to clean the hide. The silence is not the heavy animal silence of the past. It is a silence waiting to be broken. An elder begins to speak. The sound does not start in the mouth. It starts in the diaphragm, pushing a column of air upward. The air passes through the vocal cords, vibrating them like the strings of a harp. This raw buzz of sound travels up into the pharynx, where it is molded by the muscles of the throat. Then it enters the cathedral of the mouth. The tongue, that liberated acrobat, leaps into action. It taps the roof of the mouth, T. It curls back, Ra. It hisses against the back of the small, flat teeth, Ses. The lips, free from the distension of a muzzle, round and close, The sounds are crisp. They are distinct. They are digital signals in an analog world. The elder is telling a story. Perhaps it is the story of the great mammoth, or the location of the honey trees, or the memory of an ancestor who turned into a star. The listeners sit transfixed. Their brains are lighting up, decoding the vibrations in the air, turning sound into imagery. They are hallucinating together. They are seeing the mammoth without it being there. This is the miracle of the architecture of speech. It allowed us to decouple our minds from the present moment. An animal lives in the eternal now. It communicates about what is happening right here. Danger! Food! Mate! But with the complex machinery of the human mouth, we could create sounds for things that were not there. We could say, tomorrow. We could say, yesterday. We could say, if. We could create a hypothetical world and invite others to step inside it. We could plan. We could dream. We could lie. The loss of the Fang cleared the stage for this. You cannot tell a nuance-filled story with a mouth built for biting. The heavy apparatus of violence had to be dismantled to make room for the delicate apparatus of wisdom. Consider the day in the life of a Paleolithic mother. She carries her infant in a sling of leather. The baby is crying, a raw, instinctual sound that hasn't changed much since the time of the apes. But the mother does not just groom the baby to soothe it. She speaks. She leans close, her face open and flat, her small teeth visible in a gentle smile. She makes a sound that is universal across all cultures, the motherese, or baby talk. High-pitched, rhythmic, soothing. Hush, hush, my little bird. The baby watches her mouth. It sees the lips pursing. It sees the tongue moving, and it begins to mimic ba 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 da da da. This babbling is the rehearsal of the orchestra. The infant is testing the acoustics of its own cathedral. It is learning to drive the complex machine of its jaw. This interaction is the crucible of humanity. The transfer of language from one generation to the next requires a long childhood, a time of safety where the brain can wire itself to the tongue. If the mouth were still a weapon, if the jaw were still locked in a rigid hinge, this playful experimentation would be impossible. The biography of our language begins with the biography of our dental reduction. There is a profound intimacy in this. We traded the roar for the whisper. In the animal kingdom, sound is often about distance. The roar is meant to be heard miles away. It is a broadcast of power. But the whisper? The whisper requires proximity. It requires trust. To whisper to someone, you must be close enough to feel their breath. You must be within the striking distance of the old fangs. But the fangs are gone. So we lean in. Imagine two lovers in the Neolithic, lying on furs as the embers die down. The world outside is dangerous. There are wolves, there are storms, there is the unknown. But in the small space between their faces, there is a sanctuary. They speak in low tones. They use the softest consonants, the S and the H, sounds that are barely more than shaped breath. I am here, one says. You are safe, says the other. These sentences are complex grammatical structures. They require the coordination of 100 muscles, but they feel effortless. They feel like the most natural thing in the world. The teeth, those harmless stones, act as the gatekeepers of this tenderness, allowing the air to filter through in a gentle hiss rather than a guttural bark. We often look at the pyramids or the skyscrapers as the great monuments of human engineering. But the true monument is the one we carry in the lower half of our faces. It is the renovated jaw, the descended larynx, the agile tongue. It is a biological machine that was retrofitted over millions of years, turning a tool of consumption into a tool of creation. The genes that guided this, the FOXP2 gene and its silent partners, were the architects, but the materials were bone and muscle. The silent errors in the code of life tweaked the angle of the skull, shortened the jaw, and shrank the teeth, not knowing that they were preparing the instrument for Mozart, for Shakespeare, for the first lullaby ever sung to a frightened child. As you drift toward sleep, listen to the silence of your own room. Then, if you wish, whisper a single word into the darkness. Feel the way your tongue taps the ridge behind your teeth. Feel the vibration in your throat. Feel the air escape through the gap in your lips. That sensation is the echo of our journey. It is the feeling of a weapon laid down. It is the feeling of a mouth that has chosen to shape the world rather than consume it. The wind still blows outside, the same wind that blew through the Rift Valley. But now, it does not just howl. It has been captured. It has been tamed by the architecture of your mouth. It has become a voice. And in the end, that voice is the only thing that can truly conquer the dark. The sun dips below the jagged horizon of the Great Rift Valley, dragging the light of the Pliocene down with it. The world does not merely darken, it changes states. The heat of the day, which shimmered in mirages across the savannah, evaporates into the thin, dry air, leaving behind a chill that settles into the marrow of the bone. In the eras before, this was the hour of anxiety. This was the time when the vulnerable warrior, naked of claw and fang, would scramble into the high branches or huddle in the deepest recesses of a cold cave, clutching a stone, waiting for the breathing of the leopards to pass. But time flowed on, winding its way through the canyons of the epochs, and something miraculous occurred. A spark was caught. A silent error in the behavior of a brave ancestor, a moment of curiosity that overrode the instinctual fear of the red flower. We tamed the lightning. We brought the sun down to the earth and fed it sticks. We are entering the age of Homo erectus, the upright man, the fire starter. This is not just a technological leap. It is a biological revolution. The mastery of fire deepened our transformation in ways that bone alone could never achieve. It was the moment we outsourced our digestion. It was the moment we decided that the work of survival would not happen entirely inside our bodies, but in the space between us, in the flickering, mesmerizing dance of the hearth. Let us sit by this first fire. It is small, a fragile nest of acacia branches and dried dung, shielded from the wind by a circle of stones. The smoke rises in a thin gray prayer toward the stars. Around it, the faces of our ancestors are illuminated in flashes of orange and amber. They are still heavy-browed, their skin weathered by the relentless sun, but there is a softness in their posture that was not there before. They are not scanning the dark with the frantic intensity of the prey. They are watching the flames. In the center of the fire lies the catalyst of our next great change, a haunch of antelope, or perhaps a large fibrous tuber dug from the hard earth. In the old world, the world of the raw, this food would have represented a massive investment of labor. Raw meat is tough, it is elastic, it resists the tooth. To consume enough calories from raw flesh to power a growing brain, a primate must chew for hours, 5-6 hours a day of relentless rhythmic grinding. The jaw muscles must be tireless. The gut must be a churning vat of acid and heavy enzymes, working overtime to break down the cellular walls. But look at what the fire does. It performs the digestion before the food ever touches the lips. The heat denatures the proteins, unraveling the tight, complex knots of the muscle fibers. It gelatinizes the collagen, turning the tough connective tissue into soft, yielding jelly. It breaks down the hard starches of the tuber into simple sugars. This is the alchemy of the hearth. The fire does the work of the tooth. It creates the tender meat. As the smell of roasting flesh drifts through the camp, a scent that triggers a primal, salivating hunger in every human being to this day, the ancestors reach out. They tear off a piece of the cooked meat. It comes away easily in the hand. They place it in their mouths. And here, the history of the face takes another dramatic turn. The jaw, which has been liberating itself for 1,000,000 years, suddenly finds its workload slashed. The massive, repetitive force required to shear through raw sinew is no longer needed. The chew becomes a different experience. It is no longer a battle. It is a pleasure. Evolution is a ruthless efficiency expert. It follows the rule of use it or lose it. When a muscle is no longer taxed to its limit, the body stops investing expensive energy in maintaining its bulk. The massive temporalis muscles, which once fanned out across the side of the head like a helmet, began to shrink. The thick, bony anchors on the skull, the sagittal crests that gave our distant cousins their crested look, dissolved. The heavy jaw muscles, no longer needed to tear raw flesh from bone, continued to retreat. The mandible itself became lighter, thinner, more graceful. The zygomatic arches, the cheekbones, narrowed as the muscles passing beneath them grew slender. The face became more delicate, more vertical. The snout, already receding, tucked itself in completely. But this reduction was not a loss. It was a trade. As the muscles of the jaw shrank, they released the cranium from a straitjacket of tension. The sutures of the skull, no longer pulled tight by the demands of chewing, were free to expand. The brain, fueled by the dense, easily accessible calories of cooked food, pushed outward. It is a beautiful biological loop. Fire gave us softer food. Softer food gave us smaller jaws. Smaller jaws gave us bigger brains. Bigger brains gave us better control of fire. We cooked our way to intelligence. The silent witness of the tooth tells us that we did not just eat to survive, we ate to become. Let us deepen the scene. It is night. The cold of the Pleistocene tundra, or the chill of the desert, presses against the circle of light. But inside the circle, it is warm. The fire is a wall of heat that keeps the monsters at bay. For the first time in history, the night is not a time of terror, but a time of gathering. In the warm glow of the hearth, the small-toothed humans gathered. This gathering is the birthplace of society as we know it. In the daylight, while foraging or hunting, the group is often dispersed, focused on the immediate task of finding food. But at night, tethered to the fire, they are forced to be together. They sit shoulder to shoulder. The fire demands proximity, and the cooking process demands patience. You cannot eat the meat the moment you kill it. You must wait for the fire to do its work. This delayed gratification is a profound psychological shift. The hungry hunter must sit and watch the food cook. He must control his impulse to snatch and devour. He must wait for the distribution. Here, the act of eating became communal, not competitive. In the primate world, food is often a source of friction. A chimp who finds a fruit tree screams to attract the troop, but then eats as fast as he can before the others arrive. Dominance hierarchies determine who eats first. But around the fire, the dynamic changes. The food is in the center. It belongs to the fire before it belongs to the mouth. The cook, perhaps an elder female or a skilled male, presides over the transformation. When the meat is ready, it is shared. Without the biological equipment to monopolize food through force, without the long fangs to threaten a rival, without the massive jaw to crush a competitor's hand, sharing became the norm. The harmless stones of our teeth are not weapons of defense. They are tools of consumption. If I cannot fight you for the meat, I must negotiate with you. I must bond with you. The meal became a ceremony of bonding. The act of breaking bread or meat together is the oldest peace treaty. It says, I am safe, you are safe. We are fueled by the same source. And in this circle of light, we see the most poignant characters of our story, the vulnerable. Look at the figure sitting closest to the warmth. It is an old woman. Her hair is matted and gray. Her skin is a map of wrinkles, a testament to decades of sun and survival. She wraps a fur tighter around her frail shoulders. In her mouth, there are few teeth left. The molars have been worn down to the gum line by years of grit. The incisors are gone. In a wolf pack, or a lion pride, or even among our chimp cousins, this woman would be dead. A predator that cannot chew is a predator that starves. The brutal calculus of the wild has no mercy for the toothless. She would be left behind, a ghost on the savannah. But here, by the fire, she is alive. She is fed. A younger member of the tribe, perhaps her daughter or grandson, takes a piece of the cooked tuber. It is soft, roasted to a sweetness in the embers. She mashes it further, perhaps even pre-chewing it, a gesture of intimate care known as kiss feeding, and places it in the old woman's hand. The grandmother eats. She survives. This is the grandmother hypothesis in action. The reduction of the canine and the mastery of fire fostered a culture of care. It allowed us to nurture the weak and the old, extending the lifespan far beyond the years of reproductive prime. And why does the tribe keep her alive? Is it merely sentiment? Number. It is survival. Because she is alive, she remembers. She remembers the drought of 30 years ago and where the water was found. She remembers which herbs stopped the bleeding and which berries stopped the heart. She remembers the stories. In the flickering light, her voice rises. The others fall silent. She tells the story of the first fire. She tells the story of the moon spirit. She transfers the software of survival into the hardware of the young brains around her. By keeping the toothless elder alive, the tribe retains its library. The tender meat allows for the preservation of wisdom. And look to the other side of the fire. There is a child, a toddler, with the round, flat face of the human young. He has only his milk teeth, small and fragile pearls. In a world of raw meat and tough roots, he would need to be nursed by his mother for 5 or 6 years, a massive drain on her energy, preventing her from having more children. But with the fire, the child can be weaned earlier. He can eat the soft mash of cooked yam. He can eat the broth of the bone marrow. This early weaning allowed human females to have children more frequently, increasing the population, allowing us to outpace our slower breeding cousins. The child sits in the lap of the father, another new development. The father, no longer solely obsessed with patrolling the perimeter with his fangs, is present. He feeds the child. The pair bond is cemented by the shared meal. The fire warms them both. The reduction of the jaw, then, is not just about mechanics. It is about love. It is about the ability to care for those who cannot chew for themselves. The meal became a ceremony of bonding, a celebration of the peace we had chosen. The firelight dances in the eyes of the gathered tribe. The whites of their eyes, the sclera, flash in the dark, signaling attention and intent. They are watching each other. They are reading the micro-expressions on the disarmed faces. The satisfaction of the full belly releases oxytocin, the hormone of cuddling and connection. The silence of the prehistoric night is filled with the sounds of contentment. The soft smacking of lips, the cracking of roasted nuts, the murmur of voices, the laughter. This is the hearth. It is more than a source of heat. It is the center of gravity for the human soul. It is the place where the day is reviewed, where the plans are made, where the bonds are forged that will hold fast when the sun rises and the hunt begins again. The tender meat is a gift of the fire, but the tenderness of the tribe is a gift of the meal. As the embers die down, turning from orange to a soft, pulsing gray, the tribe settles into sleep. They sleep deeply, entering the REM cycles that are essential for emotional processing and memory consolidation. They can sleep deeply because they are safe. They are safe because they are together. The heavy jaw is gone. The terrifying fangs are a memory buried in the genes. In their place is a mouth capable of savoring the warmth, a face capable of smiling at the flames, and a heart capable of feeding the one who has no teeth. We are the children of the hearth. We are the species that learned to soften the world so that we could survive it together. And even today, when we gather around a table, when we light a candle, when we share a warm meal with those we love, we are reenacting this ancient ritual. We are honoring the moment when we stopped tearing at the world with our teeth and started warming it with our hands. The smoke rises, the night holds its breath, and the small-toothed giants dream of tomorrow. The night deepens, wrapping the world in a velvet silence that feels as old as the earth itself. The frantic rhythms of the modern day, the clocks, the screens, the engines, have faded, leaving only the sound of your own breathing and the slow, steady beat of your heart. In this quiet space, let us turn our attention inward, away from the vast landscapes of the savanna and the ice fields, to the landscape of your own body. Let us journey into the intimate geography of the mouth, to touch the physical memory of where we came from. Lie still. Let your jaw relax, the tension draining from the muscles of the cheek and temple. Now, slowly, deliberately, run the tip of your tongue along the ridge of your upper teeth. Feel the flat, broad surfaces of the incisors, the front gates of the mouth. Then, move slightly to the side, to the third tooth from the center. Pause there. You will feel a subtle change in the architecture. It is a point. It is not sharp enough to draw blood, nor long enough to break the seal of your lips, but it is distinct. It is a conical rise in the landscape of enamel, a small, rounded peak standing guard at the corner of the dental arch. This is your eye tooth. This is the canine. It sits there, modest and unassuming, a silent resident in a mouth designed for soft words and cooked food. But do not be deceived by its size. This tooth is a ghost in the machine. It is a ruin, a weathered monument left behind by an empire that fell millions of years ago. It is the echo in the bone, a tangible connection to a time when the law of the land was written in violence, and the survival of your lineage depended on the ability to maim. Even today, the memory of that ancient violence lingers. It is locked in the calcium and the phosphate, trapped in the hardest substance the human body can produce. If you press your tongue against the back of that tooth, you are touching a direct descendant of the saber. You are touching the blunted grandchild of the weapon that once ruled the Miocene forest. Why do we call them eye teeth? The name itself is a whisper of anatomy and danger. If you were to look at the skull of a human, stripped of flesh, you would see that the root of this tooth is extraordinary. It is the longest root in the mouth, a thick, sturdy anchor that plunges deep into the maxilla, the upper jawbone. It reaches up, past the nose, almost touching the floor of the orbit, the eye socket. This massive root is a structural legacy. In our ancestors, this anchor had to be immense. It had to withstand the violent, shearing forces of a killing bite. It had to hold firm when the fang was driven into the struggling flesh of a rival or a prey animal. If the root were weak, the weapon would snap. So nature built a pillar of bone, a deep foundation for a skyscraper of aggression. Today, the skyscraper has been demolished, but the foundation remains. You can feel it on your own face. If you place a finger on the skin of your upper lip, just beside the nostril, and press gently, you will feel a ridge of bone. This is the canine eminence. It is the housing for that deep, ancient root. It gives your face its fullness. It shapes the corner of your mouth. Without it, the face would collapse inward. We are literally built around the memory of the Fang. Our smile is draped over the ruins of our weaponry. They are known as canines still, a linguistic fossil reminding us of the dogs and wolves we once resembled, and indeed, the wolves that still roam the wild places of the earth. When a wolf howls at the moon, bearing its white daggers to the night air, it is using the tool that we discarded. We look at the wolf, and we feel a strange primal recognition. It is not just fear, it is memory. We remember what it felt like to be that powerful. We remember what it felt like to carry the knife in our mouths. But evolution is not a clean eraser. It does not wipe the slate perfectly clean. It scribbles over the old text, leaving faint indentations, shadows of the words that were once shouted. Occasionally, the old text bleeds through. In the complex, twisting library of the human genome, there are books that have been closed for eons. These are the genes for the heavy brow, the genes for the tail, and the genes for the massive interlocking fang. They are silent errors in the code of life, switched off by the regulatory proteins, dormant but not deleted. They slumber in the dark, twisting helix of every cell in your body. But sometimes, a librarian falls asleep. A switch is flipped by accident during the chaotic, miraculous assembly of a fetus in the womb. And a human child is born with a genetic throwback, an atavism. Imagine the confusion of a parent, peering into the mouth of their newborn, and seeing not the flat, harmless ridges of the modern human, but the sharp, recurved points of the ancestor. Occasionally, a human is born with larger, sharper canines, teeth that project slightly beyond the occlusal plane. It is a haunting phenomenon. It is as if the Miocene is trying to speak one last time. It is a reminder that the monster is not gone. It is merely sleeping. We are not a new species created from scratch. We are a remodeled ape, and the blueprints of the old model are still rolled up in the attic. But for the vast majority of us, these vestiges are silent. They are buried in a face designed for expression, not extermination. They have been repurposed. In the great biography of the body, the canine has been given a new job, a peaceful profession in the society of the mouth. Consider the canine guidance. This is a term used by modern dentists, the mechanics of the jaw. When you slide your jaw to the side to grind a piece of tough bread or a seed, your top and bottom canines touch. They act as a ramp. They gently lift the back teeth apart, protecting the molars from clashing against each other with destructive force. They are the guardians of the bite. They no longer tear flesh. They protect the machine. They have beaten their swords into plowshares. They sit quietly alongside the incisors and the molars, distinct but cooperative, members of a team that works in harmony to nourish the body. This cooperation is the physical manifestation of our change in spirit. A mouth full of weapons is a mouth of individuals, each tooth fighting for space, each tooth a solitary soldier. A mouth of flattened, level teeth is a phalanx, a shield wall. They work together. The incisor cuts, the canine guides, the premolar crushes, the molar grinds. It is a specialized industrial line, efficient and communal. As you lie there, tracing the shape of your teeth with your tongue, think of them as a layered manuscript. The body is a palimpsest, a document written, erased, and written over again. The deepest layer is the reptile. Deep in the structure of the tooth, in the dentin and the pulp, lies the memory of the first creatures to crawl from the sea, snapping at dragonflies with simple conical spikes. The middle layer is the mammal, the primate, the warrior. This is the shape of the canine itself, the pointed echo of the hierarchy, the memory of the alpha male sitting in the high branches, bearing his ivory crown to keep the troop in line. And the top layer? The top layer is the human. It is the enamel that has been worn flat by cooking, by grinding, by the eating of grain. It is the layer of the peacemaker. It is the layer of the smile. We carry the history of the predator, but we also carry the history of the peacemaker. It is a duality that defines our existence. We are capable of profound violence. We can see it in our wars, in our cruelty, but we are physically built for peace. Our anatomy resists violence. If you try to bite an enemy today, you will likely break your own jaw or shatter your teeth. You are not built for it anymore. You are wearing the armor of a pacifist. The bone itself remembers the choice we made. It was not a conscious choice, debated around a campfire. It was a choice made by thousands of generations of females selecting for gentler males. It was a choice made by the environment, rewarding those who could cooperate over those who could kill. It was a choice made by the whispering of the New World, which told us that the true power lay not in the sharp point, but in the open hand. But the ghost is not only in the bone, it is in the mind. The echo reverberates in our behaviors. Why do we bare our teeth when we are in a rage? When a modern human is truly furious, the lips pull back, exposing the canines. We hiss, we snarl. It is a useless gesture now. We cannot inflict a lethal wound, but the software is still running. The brain is trying to deploy a weapon that the body no longer possesses. And consider the love bite. In the throes of passion, in the deepest intimacy, humans often feel a compulsion to bite their partners, not to break the skin, but to hold, to press the teeth against the flesh. It is a strange, paradoxical impulse. Why would we want to simulate violence in a moment of love? Perhaps it is the ancient memory of the neck bite, the way a male primate holds a female during mating. Or perhaps it is something deeper. Perhaps it is a way of saying, I could hurt you. I have the memory of the weapon. But I choose not to. The love bite is the ultimate act of trust. It is the sheathed sword. It is the predator acknowledging the peace. The sensory experience of the tooth is unique. Enamel is the only part of the skeleton that is visible, naked to the world. It is a stone that feels. The nerves inside the tooth are incredibly sensitive. A breath of cold air, a sip of hot tea. The tooth feels it all. It is a sentinel standing at the gate of the body. Imagine the day in the life of this tooth in the deep past. 1,000,000 years ago, a Homo erectus hunter walks through the dry grass. He is hungry. He spots a lizard sunning itself on a rock. He catches it. He bites. The canine, still larger than, still sharper, punctures the scales. The nerve inside the tooth screams with the sensation of the impact, the temperature of the prey, the texture of the grit. Now, imagine your day. You woke up. You brushed your teeth, a ritual of worship for these harmless stones. You used mint paste, a soft brush. You protected them. You ate a piece of toast. The canine sliced through the bread, guiding the jaw. It felt the warmth of the coffee. It felt the softness of a kiss on the cheek of a loved one. The tooth is the same. The DNA that built it is largely the same. But the world it lives in has changed completely. It has moved from a world of blood to a world of bread. And what of the future? Evolution has not stopped. The stream is still flowing, wearing down the mountains of the past. Our jaws are continuing to shrink. Our wisdom teeth, the third molars, are disappearing, failing to erupt in more and more children. The face is becoming even flatter, even more vertical. Will the canine eventually vanish? Will it become indistinguishable from the incisors, a completely flat wall of white? Perhaps. The echo is fading. The ghost is becoming transparent. But for now, it remains. It is a necessary reminder. It reminds us that peace is not a weakness. It is an achievement. It is a hard-won victory over our own nature. Every time you smile, you are stretching the muscles over the ruins of a fortress. You are turning a threat display into a welcome. As you drift deeper into the comfort of the night, run your tongue over that small point one last time. Acknowledge it. It is an old soldier who has laid down his arms. It is a veteran of the Miocene wars, now retired to the quiet life of speech and sustenance. It sits there, in the dark of your mouth, listening to the words you speak. It shapes the S, and the F, and the V. It helps you say safe. It helps you say sleep. The violence is gone, evaporated into the mists of deep time. The hunger of the predator has been replaced by the hunger for connection. The echo in the bone is faint now, a lullaby rather than a war cry. We are the creatures who tamed ourselves. We are the lions who learned to be lambs, not because we were afraid, but because we found something better to do with our mouths than kill. We found a way to speak the names of the stars. Let the jaw hang loose. Let the teeth part slightly, breaking the contact, ending the grind. Let the tongue rest on the floor of the mouth, in the cradle of the lower jaw. The work of the evolutionary ages is done for today. The manuscript is written. The ghost is at rest. You are whole. You are a mosaic of the ancient and the new. And in the silence of your own biology, you are a testament to the enduring power of the gentle. Sleep now, and let the bone remember. The hour is late. The world outside your window has settled into the monochromatic stillness of the night. In this quietude, where the only sound is the rhythm of your own breathing, let us perform a small ritual of recognition. If you were to stand before a mirror now, in the dim, amber light of a bedside lamp or the pale wash of the moon, you would see a reflection that is the culmination of a 4-million-year journey. Look at the face that stares back at you. It is a landscape of subtle topography. Unlike the dramatic, jutting geography of our ancient cousins, the heavy, protruding muzzles of the chimp or the wolf, your face is a vertical cliff. The snout has retreated, pulled back by the slow, invisible winch of evolution until the mouth sits directly beneath the eyes. The heavy ridges of bone that once shaded the gaze like rocky overhangs have smoothed into the gentle curve of the forehead. It is a face of remarkable flatness, a face that feels almost naked in its exposure. This is the orthognathic visage, the vertical face of the modern human. It is a face that has nothing to hide behind. In the animal kingdom, the face is often a shield, a wall of fur and bone designed to deflect a blow or terrify a rival. But your face is a canvas. It is covered in skin so thin and translucent that the very blood in your veins contributes to its color. It is a face that requires trust to exist. It is a face that says, I have laid down my armor, and I am standing before you, open to the world. To understand the profundity of this exposure, we must drift back through the mists of deep time to a specific moment in the Pleistocene, perhaps 50,000 years ago. Picture a glacial lake in the shadow of a receding ice sheet. The air is sharp and metallic, tasting of snow and crushed granite. The water is perfectly still, a sheet of obsidian reflecting the gray, heavy sky. A hunter kneels by the water's edge. He is tired. The hunt has been long, and the cold has seeped into his joints. He leans forward to drink, cupping his hands, and for a moment the water settles, and he sees himself. He sees the same flatness you see. He sees the softness of the mouth, the vulnerability of the cheeks. He does not see a killer looking back at him. He sees a being whose primary weapon is no longer the bite, but the bond. This reflection is the mirror of the soul. It is the biological interface that allowed us to transition from a species of solitary survival to a species of radical community. In the brutal calculus of the wild, this face is a liability. Without a muzzle to catch the force of a blow, the delicate bones of the nose and the orbits are easily shattered. Without a thick covering of fur, the skin is vulnerable to the sun, the wind, and the teeth of insects. But we accepted these costs. We paid the price of fragility to purchase the power of expression. Let us treat the face as a character in this biography of the body. It is an instrument of immense complexity, a machine built of 43 distinct muscles, known as the mimetic muscles. In most mammals, facial muscles are broad sheets of flesh, designed for simple, utilitarian tasks, twitching the skin to shake off a fly, swiveling the ears to catch a sound, or retracting the lips to prepare for a bite. They are the muscles of reaction. But in the human face, these muscles fractured. Over thousands of generations of silent errors and genetic accidents, the broad sheets split into slender, specialized ribbons. They detached from the bone and anchored themselves directly into the skin. This is a revolutionary architectural detail. It means that when the muscle contracts, it does not move a joint. It moves the surface. It pulls the skin into a wrinkle, a fold, a dimple. This anatomical innovation turned the face into a billboard of the internal world. It allowed us to broadcast our emotional state with high-fidelity precision. The subtle twitch of the levator labii indicates disgust. The slight contraction of the corrugator between the eyebrows signals concern. The raising of the inner brow reveals sadness. We became the only primates who could truly see into each other's minds by looking at each other's skin. Consider the phenomenon of the blush. It is one of the most mysterious and uniquely human traits in our repertoire. No other animal blushes. A dog may look guilty, a chimp may look submissive, but only a human being's face catches fire with the blood of shame. Imagine a scene in the communal hearth of a Paleolithic cave. The fire is crackling, casting dancing shadows on the limestone walls. The tribe is gathered for the evening distribution of meat. A young hunter, perhaps eager to prove himself, has violated a social norm. Maybe he took a piece of meat out of turn, or maybe he boasted too loudly of a kill that was not his. The eyes of the elders turned to him. In a wolf pack, this tension would be resolved with a snap of the jaws, a physical dominance display. The young wolf would roll over, exposing its throat. But here, something else happens. The young man feels the heat rising in his chest. His sympathetic nervous system, the ancient fight-or-flight controller, triggers a paradoxical response. Instead of diverting blood to the muscles for a sprint, it floods the capillaries of the face and neck. The skin turns crimson, the head lowers, the eyes avert. This is the blush. It is an involuntary confession. It is the body saying, I know I have transgressed. I value your opinion of me. I am suffering for my mistake. And what is the result? The elders see the color. They see the honest signal. Because the blush cannot be faked, it is trusted. It diffuses the aggression of the group. It is a plea for forgiveness written in hemoglobin. The tension breaks. The young man is not exiled. He is reintegrated. The blush saved him. This is the evolutionary duality of our transparency. To blush is to be vulnerable. It is to lose control of your own facade. It reveals your insecurity, your shame, your desire. In a poker game, it is a disaster. But in the game of survival, it was the glue that held the tribe together. It proved that we cared about the social contract enough to bleed for it, right there on the surface of our cheeks. But the mirror reflects more than just the skin. It reflects the mouth. We are the only primates who can truly see into each other's mouths without fear. Recall the verdict of the Fang. In the ancient forest, to see the inside of another male's mouth was usually the last thing you saw before the darkness took you. The open mouth was the gateway to death. The massive canines were the sentinels of a lethal interior. But as the softening of the stone took place, and the teeth leveled into harmless stones, the meaning of the open mouth inverted. The mouth became a zone of intimacy. Think of the act of laughter. It is a universal human behavior, a series of rhythmic, vocalized exhalations that involve the wide opening of the jaws. When we laugh, we throw our heads back. We expose the throat, the most vulnerable part of the body. We open the mandible wide, showing the tongue, the teeth, the soft palate. If a chimpanzee sees another chimp doing this, mouth wide, teeth exposed, noise erupting, it interprets it as a high-intensity threat or a scream of panic. But when we do it, it is an invitation. It signals that the environment is safe. It signals that we are unarmed. This transparency is the foundation of our empathy. By losing the physical barrier of the Fang, we dismantled the emotional barrier between individuals. We cleared the obstructions from the gateway. Consider the kiss. Anthropologists and evolutionary biologists have debated the origins of the kiss for decades. Some say it began as kiss feeding, the way a mother bird feeds her chicks, or a primate mother pre-chews tough food and passes it mouth to her weanling. Imagine a mother in the Neolithic, holding her child. She chews a piece of hard root, grinding it down with her rotary jaw, and then presses her lips to the lips of her infant. It is an act of survival, a transfer of calories. But it is also a transfer of touch. The lips are packed with nerve endings, more sensitive than the fingertips. The contact releases oxytocin. The survival mechanism becomes a love mechanism. Over thousands of years, this utilitarian transfer evolved into a ritual of affection. We kiss to taste the other. We kiss to share the breath. We kiss because we are the only creatures who can bring our faces that close together without the subconscious fear of being bitten. The flat face allows the geometry of the kiss. A protruding muzzle makes it mechanically awkward. We are built for this collision of the mouths. We became the creatures of intimacy. The evolutionary river carried us away from the solitary power of the killer and deposited us on the shores of community, where the greatest strength is found in the softness of a smile shared between strangers. Let us dwell on that image. Strangers. In the vast majority of the animal world, a stranger is an enemy. If a wolf from one pack meets a wolf from another in the neutral zone, there is almost always violence. Xenophobia, fear of the stranger, is the default setting of nature. But humans did something unprecedented. We began to live in densities that required us to tolerate those we did not know. As the hunter-gatherer bands coalesced into the larger tribes of the Upper Paleolithic, and eventually into the villages of the first farmers, we had to navigate a sea of unfamiliar faces. How do you know if a stranger is safe? You look at the mirror of their soul. You read the canvas. You look for the Duchenne marker. When a person smiles genuinely, the orbicularis oculi muscle around the eye contracts, creating the crinkle, the crow's feet. This muscle is involuntary for most people. It is hard to fake. A deceitful smile involves only the mouth. A true smile involves the eyes. Our ancestors became experts at spotting the difference. We evolved a cheater detection system in the brain, constantly scanning the faces of others for the mismatch between the mouth and the eyes. We survived by being psychologists. The flat face with its open canvas made this reading possible. And speaking of the eyes, let us look closer at the windows of the soul. Look at your own eyes in the mirror. Notice the white part, the sclera. Humans are the only primates with a widely visible bright white sclera. If you look at a gorilla, its eyes are dark brown or black, with very little white showing. This is a camouflage adaptation. If you are a competitive primate, you do not want your rival to know exactly where you are looking. If you spot a piece of fruit, you want to glance at it without giving away its location. Dark eyes conceal the direction of the gaze. But humans evolved white eyes. Why? Because we became a species that wanted to be read. We wanted to advertise our attention. Imagine a hunting party moving through the tall grass of the savannah. They must be silent. They cannot shout, "Gazelle to the left." The prey would run. So they use the eyes. One hunter catches the gaze of another. He widens his eyes, the white sclera flashing like a beacon against his dark skin. He darts his pupils to the left. The other hunter sees exactly where he is looking. This is the cooperative eye hypothesis. We evolved eyes that shout our intentions. We gave up the advantage of deception for the advantage of coordination. Our physiology assumes that we are on the same team. We are built to share our point of view. This face-to-face, eye-to-eye existence fundamentally changed the way we bonded. Most primates bond through grooming, picking through the fur of the back and the head. It is a tactile, rhythmic activity. But as we lost our fur and as we faced each other to speak and to read expressions, grooming changed. We began to groom each other with our voices and our faces. We sat across from each other. We held eye contact, an act that is aggressive in other apes but hypnotic in humans. We nodded. We mirrored each other's expressions. If you smile, I smile. If you frown, I frown. This emotional contagion is the basis of empathy. It is the neurological bridge that allows me to feel your pain as if it were my own. The flat, expressive face is the hardware that runs the software of love. Now, let us return to the mirror in your room. The dim light softens the edges of your reflection. You see a creature that is, in many ways, a biological paradox. You are a predator that blushes. You are an ape that weeps. You are a survival machine that has stripped away its armor to expose its heart. Think of the day in the life of this face in the modern world. You walked through a city today. You passed hundreds of people. You did not fight them. You did not flee from them. You navigated the crowd with a series of microscopic facial signals, a polite nod, a quick smile of apology, a shifting of the gaze to grant privacy. You used the ancient tool of the mirror to weave your way through the tribe of humanity. And when you came home, you perhaps saw a loved one. You let the mask drop completely. You allowed the face to relax into the neutrality of safety. You might have pressed your forehead against theirs, a gesture of, "I am here." This ability to be seen is our greatest burden and our greatest gift. It makes us vulnerable to shame, to judgment, to the pain of rejection. But it also makes us capable of the profound relief of being understood. The mirror of the soul is not just a metaphor. It is an anatomical reality. It is the flatness of the bone, the whiteness of the eye, the redness of the blush, and the nakedness of the skin. It is the reason we are the storytelling animal, the animal that paints its history not just on the walls of caves, but on the walls of its own visage. As the night deepens and you prepare to close your eyes, take one last look at the reflection. Forgive the lines of worry. Forgive the shadows of fatigue. See the face for what it truly is, a miracle of connection. It is a face that was carved by the wind of the savannah and the warmth of the fire. It is a face that survived the ice and the dark by learning to shine. It is a face that replaced the fang with the smile, and in doing so, lit a lamp in the window of the world. Turn away from the mirror now. Let the darkness hold you. You do not need to see your face to know it is there. The muscles relax. The levator lets go. The orbicularis smooths out. The jaw hangs loose. The mirror is covered, resting for the night, waiting to reflect the light of a new day. You are safe in the shores of community, protected by the empathy that your ancestors bought with their own vulnerability. Sleep now, face to face with the quiet of the stars. The great wheel of the stars turns slowly overhead, grinding through the velvet darkness of the night, just as it has for 4 billion years. We have reached the end of our journey, standing on the shores of the present moment, looking back across the immense, undulating ocean of time. The roar of the Miocene forest has faded into a whisper. The crunch of the Pleistocene snow is a distant memory. The fires of the first hearths have burned down to embers, their warmth now encoded in the very structure of our society. And so, as you drift towards sleep, nestled in the safety of your own sanctuary, I invite you to remember the journey of your own face. It is a journey that defies the brutal logic of the wild, a story written not in blood, but in trust. Reach up in your mind's eye and trace the contours of your humanity. Feel the flatness of the profile, the vertical cliff of the forehead, the modest retreat of the chin. This architecture is not an accident. It is a monument. Just as the pyramids stand as a testament to human engineering, your face stands as a testament to human kindness. It is the result of millions of small, silent choices made by your ancestors. Choices to share rather than hoard, to smile rather than snarl, to embrace rather than destroy. Remember that you are the descendant of the gentle. In the grand, violent lottery of evolution, where the prize usually goes to the swift and the strong, your lineage won by being the most cooperative. We are the children of the peacemakers, the bullies of the prehistoric world, the solitary tyrants with their massive fangs and locking jaws are gone. They are dust in the strata of the Great Rift Valley, but the vulnerable, the small-toothed, the ones who huddled together in the dark, they are here. You are here. The loss of the Fang was not a loss at all. It was a tremendous opening. Imagine a heavy door, bound in iron and spiked with ivory, that has been locked for eons. Behind that door lay the potential for the human spirit, for language, for art, for the complex sympathy of a shared life. As long as the mouth was a weapon, that door remained shut. The energy of the body was consumed by the forge of the jaw. The mind was trapped in the binary calculus of the fight. But slowly, generation by generation, the lock rusted. The spikes eroded. The door swung wide. What rushed in to fill the space left by the weapon? It was the word. It was the song. It was the kiss. We laid down the weapons in our mouths so that we could pick up the tools of civilization. This is the great exchange. When the hands were no longer needed to help the jaw tear flesh, they were free to chip the flint. They were free to weave the basket. They were free to shape the clay. The precision grip of the hand is the partner of the parabolic arch of the teeth. They are the twin pillars of our dominance. We stopped cutting the world with our teeth and started cutting it with our minds. Consider the room you lie in now, the walls that shelter you, the cloth that covers you, the intricate web of technology that surrounds you. None of this would exist if we had kept the fangs. A species that resolves its conflicts with biting does not build cities. A species that cannot look each other in the eye without triggering a threat response does not build the internet. The civilization that cradles you tonight is the direct result of the softening of the stone. It is the physical manifestation of our ability to work together, an ability purchased with the currency of our own disarmament. In the quiet of the night, let this realization sink into your muscles. Let your jaw relax. Focus your attention on the masseter muscle, the thick band of tissue at the back of your jaw, just below the ear. For millions of years, in the bodies of your ancestors, this muscle was a coiled spring, always tight, always ready to snap shut on a rival or a prey animal. It carried the tension of survival. It held the weight of the crown of ivory. But you do not need that tension now. You are safe. You are not on the savannah. The leopards are gone. The hierarchy is not determined by the bite. Let the muscle lengthen. Let the lower jaw drop slightly, creating a small, comfortable space between the upper and lower teeth. Feel the temporalis muscle, the fan-shaped sheet that covers your temples. In the ancient nutcracker man, this muscle was so massive it met at the top of the skull. It was a helmet of tension. But in you, it is delicate. Let it soften. Smooth the worry from your brow. The heavy armor of the past is gone, replaced by the enduring power of the human spirit. As the physical tension leaves your face, let the ancient emotional tension leave your spirit. The biography of the body tells us that we carry the stress of the ages. We carry the ghost of the predator in our adrenaline. But we also carry the cure. You are part of a lineage that survived by learning to be gentle. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is a biological fact. The fossils tell us that the individuals who cared for the crippled, the elderly, and the sick were the ones whose tribes flourished. The survival of the fittest was actually the survival of the caregivers. Think of the Shanidar Neanderthal, who lived 40,000 years ago. His skeleton shows that he was withered, one-armed, and blind in one eye. In a world of wolves, he should have died within weeks. But he lived for decades. Why? Because someone chewed his food for him. Because someone guided him. Because someone loved him. That love is in your DNA. It is the reason you are alive tonight. You are the product of an unbroken chain of care, stretching back to the first fire. Every one of your ancestors was fed, protected, and nurtured by a group. You are the legacy of 1 billion acts of kindness. Rest now in the knowledge that your very anatomy is a testament to cooperation. Run your tongue over your teeth one last time, not to feel the sharp points of the echo, but to feel the smooth, continuous wall of the phalanx. They stand together, shoulder to shoulder, a unified front. They are a symbol of the collective. We are the soft-mouthed giants. It is a strange title, is it not? We are the apex predators of the planet, the shapers of the biosphere, the masters of the atom. And yet, we did it without claws. We did it without armor. We did it with mouths that are soft, with lips that are sensitive, with tongues that are agile. We are the dreamers who survived the dark by learning to smile at the stars. Imagine the first time an ancestor looked up at the night sky not with fear, but with wonder. The fangs were gone. The jaw was relaxed. The mind, liberated from the constant noise of aggression, was free to ask the great questions. What are those lights? Where do we come from? The awe you feel when you look at the Milky Way is the same awe they felt. It is the feeling of a mind that has outgrown its body. It is the feeling of a species that has traded the certainty of the bite for the mystery of the cosmos. And notice the silence of your room. It is not the terrifying silence of the Pliocene night, where silence meant a predator was stalking. It is the silence of peace. It is the silence of a world that has been tamed by cooperation. In this silence, the silent witnesses, your teeth, are at rest. They are not grinding. They are not sharpening. They are floating in the cradle of the jaw, waiting for the morning, when they will be used to speak words of love, to eat the bread of the harvest, to smile at a neighbor. This is the legacy of peace. It is not a history lesson. It is a physical sensation. It is the feeling of safety that wraps around you like a warm fur. As you drift deeper, imagine the faces of those who came before you. See the heavy-browed Homo erectus staring into the fire, his face softening as he shares a piece of meat. See the Homo heidelbergensis mother singing a humming lullaby to her child, her lips brushing the infant's forehead. See the early modern humans painting red ochre on the walls of a cave, their mouths open in laughter. They are all standing around you now, a ring of guardians in the shadows. They have passed the torch to you. They have done the hard work of evolving. They have weathered the ice ages, the droughts, the volcanic winters. They have shed the fangs so that you could have a face that shines. They are whispering to you across the eons. Can you hear them? They are saying, "You do not need to fight tonight. You do not need to be afraid. We have built a wall of connection around you. We have turned the darkness into a home. The ancient accidents, the genetic mutations, the shifting plates, the descending larynx, were not accidents at all. They were the stepping stones on the path to you. The silent errors in the code of life were the notes of a symphony that was composing itself, movement by movement, until it reached the crescendo of the human soul. Sleep now, and let the ancient peace hold you. Let the mirror of the soul turn inward to the world of dreams. In that world, you are free. You can fly. You can speak languages that do not exist. You can visit the past. And if, in your dreams, you find yourself back in the verdant shadow of the Miocene, do not be afraid. If you see the giants with the ivory daggers, simply smile at them. Show them the harmless stones. Show them the power of the open face. And watch as the forest recedes and the sun rises on the savannah and the world transforms from a battlefield into a garden. The struggle is over. The weapon is laid down. The jaw is free. The night is yours. The peace is yours. The future is yours. Good night, soft-mouthed giant. Good night, child of the hearth. Good night.